for the personnel contracts meeting being held on at Central High School. Today is September 21st, 2023. It's 6 p.m. Members that are present of the board are Mr. Perez and Mr. Robert Traber, and then staff that are online as well as candidates. At this moment, I would like to entertain a motion for approval of meeting minutes for August 22nd, 2023.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Traber, second by Ms. Perez. Are there any corrections, updates, or things need to be edited? All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, so for our first item is interview and discussion of candidates for positions. I'm going to read them down and then we'll go through them one at a time. The first one is assistant principal for Dunbar School. Then it's assistant principal for Reed School, director of math, director of literacy, director of special education, assistant superintendent for SEL, comprehensive health and student affairs. So I am asking, I see that Ms. Dixon is here, is our first candidate here for assistant principal for Dunbar. Reed. Oops. Oh, so it's wrong on the agenda. My bad. Sorry, I'm going to scroll down. 1 second.
You know, it says Dunbar.
No, in the, if you go down the times for the candidates.
Oh, the times part, right. I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm right here. I decided I should start printing.
Thank you. Thank you. So the first one is Diana Lipton for assistant principal for Reed. And we're a little early, so just want to, is she here? Yeah. All right, so please join us at the table. Just want to make for the record, there are certain positions that will require executive session. This is not one of them, so we're excited to have you. Thank you for having me. All right, so the way that this is going to go, this interview is done in public, and you will receive one question based off board members. These committee members, they will ask you that one question, and one question will stay consistent with you and anyone else applying for this position. Obviously, there isn't anyone at this time. We have your resume on file. We just ask that tell us a little bit about yourself that is not already captured in your resume, and then each committee member will be able to ask you a question after you're done. All right, so floor is yours.
So my name is Diana Lipton. I have been a very proud member of the Reed School family for a little over 10 years. I began at Reed actually as a long-term substitute and have worked my way through several positions, including a graduate internship, a classroom teacher, and I currently hold the role of elementary academic support instructor. I actually took that role right after finishing my administrative internship. After a discussion with my administrator about how that position would allow me to leverage my leadership skills and really support teaching and learning at Reed. I also am our lead literacy teacher for K-3. It's a both assessment expert and in-school peer support mentor, and I work with year 1 and year 2 teachers to support their practice. I also am really proud of being a member of the Teacher Leader Fellowship Academy at Sacred Heart. I've presented with our school team on culturally responsive teaching, social emotional learning, and cultivating school climate at Sacred Heart. I'm really very proud of that. That's me. I'm a member of the district SEL team and a founding member of our school SEL team as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for interviewing with us today. So I'm going to open it up for committee members to ask their questions, and then I will allow non-committee members to ask their question as well. Just reminding them that questions to stay consistent with any of the interviews that are done in public. Let the record reflect Ms. Casimir is present, and then also Dr. Levy has joined us as well. So Ms. Perez?
What are your top priorities for this position?
One of my top priorities is focusing on parent and community engagement. I feel like since COVID, we've kind of lost that. So really focusing on building a strong pact again. At school life, and I typed up those pact fact sheet, a FAQ sheet, and as parents were coming in, I talked with them about what a PAC is, what the goals and objectives there are of a PAC committee, and ask parents to sign up, even if they're not interested in committing fully. Just put their name and information down if they would attend one meeting and see if it's something that they would be interested in. And really get parents back in our schools, whether it's attending PAC meetings, coming to parent and family engagement events, maybe volunteering to do a family read-along, or attending a field trip. I really think we need parents and families back in our schools and engaged in their child's learning.
Thank you. Mr. Schraber?
Yes, explain to me why you think you're the best candidate for the job.
I think I'm the best candidate for this job because I know Reed School. I've been there for my career was born at Reed School, and I know our families, I know our community, I know our procedures and our students, our families. I know the way we work. I feel like I can step in that role tomorrow and really do it without loss. I love our families. I truly feel like I can make a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Cassidy? Okay. My question is, share how you handle a situation or challenge that in your current role, and how will that experience help you for this new role?
So in my current role, one challenge that I feel like I face has been the transition from being sort of a colleague to more of somebody that is going to have to give direction and directives that were coming from downtown. And I feel like I had to really learn how to communicate and be a listener and effectively communicate with teachers. And I feel like doing that and learning how to work together for the better of our students has really taught me that we're all here for a common purpose. And so I think that listening and working together and building those relationships with staff in a different way has really been my challenge.
Awesome. Well, we don't have any further questions. We want to say thank you for taking the opportunity to interview with us, but thank you for also serving our district in the capacity that you are currently in and will be in your new position. The board makes recommendations to the superintendent, and we will share our thoughts via email or in conversation with the superintendent. She ultimately has the final decision on this particular position, but we thank you for taking that time up. You should be hearing from HR on next steps. All right, thank you
so much for your time.
No problem. Our next one, have a lot of time, so I want to make sure that it's not going to cause an issue with any candidates that are coming later, but we're going to move steady with this. Our next candidate is Mr. I call you Mr. Planes. Mr. Planes for Director of Math, and he's currently going to interview with us today. Your position requires executive session, so even though according to our bylaws it requires it, the board will take a vote whether or not the board votes for it. It's fine, but we'll still do an executive session if that's what you would like.
Open if you like, whatever.
It's up to you.
Yeah, open is fine.
Okay,
Yeah, fine.
well, let's still take the vote just for the record. Would someone like to make a motion to go into executive session?
Motion. Second.
All right, any questions or concerns? No? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? I abstain. All right, abstain. But because you asked to have it in public, we'll do it in public. Mr. Planis, the same process for you is the same thing we did for the prior candidate. Thank you for taking the opportunity for interviewing with us today. With that being said, we would ask that you share with us something that we don't already know from your resume and your bio. And then, whatever you would like for us to know about you. Each board member will be given one question. That one question will stay consistent, just as we've done in the previous interview. So you have the floor.
So one of the things that you probably don't know about me is I have been working on developing and working on a cohesive way to teach mathematics throughout all these years. At some point in time, I wish to publish a book about how to teach math and be very specific about, English language learners and special populations. I know that all of our books, they have pieces, but throughout my engagement in Bridgeport, throughout my engagement in many other places, I have learned a lot of strategies that have really worked throughout the years. And I would like to put them cohesively throughout. One of the things that you'll see in my resume is I was a collaborator in
Let's tell us why you think you'd make a good math director.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Trevor. I've lived in Bridgeport all my life. I've been here throughout my career. Knowing our students, knowing our population is just the beginning. But I think a good math director, have seen different things that work, have experienced, read the literature, and one of the things that I've done is I have looked at things that we have implemented and things that the way that we have implemented different things, and I try to improve on those things. I've looked at trends in data. I know our teachers. I know our staff. I know the areas where we need to work more. I spend time with our parents and just talking to them, just finding out ways that we could help develop math nights and help others develop math nights. I see you're just smiling because you've seen some of the math nights. And I see what helps our community grow as learners in mathematics. And so in looking at that, I think if you brought someone new, they might not have that knowledge. We've tried different programs in Bridgeport, and implementing those programs is extremely difficult. It's a big place. Even choosing the program is very difficult. So why we have implemented programs in Bridgeport throughout all my career here, and I could see what could work in different places with what we have and how to ensure that they're sustained. And so that knowledge is worth oodles of money and time. And so it's most importantly, it's my commitment. I'm not looking to go anywhere. I'm only 50 years old, and I'm looking to continue my career for the next 14, 15 years. So that's why.
Great. Ms. Perez?
Well, these are your math nights. They are fun. So what would be one of your top priorities for this position?
Yeah, I think that some of the things that we have been working on, I think expanding on it. I talked to the superintendent about coaching. I think I call it stopping the bleeding. We lose a lot of teachers in our year, a lot of math teachers every single year. And part of the reason why we lose them is not about money. It's about coaching. It's about ensuring that they have what they need and they feel comfortable with it. We've been offered a lot of money to go elsewhere. We still stay here. And part of that reason is because we feel like there's a group around us that sustain us and that we're feeding from. And that doesn't take a lot of money to create that. I think creating a coaching environment in some formal way is one of the first things that I like to work on. The concept of elite teacher does save money, and it's what we have right now. But I think expanding on that and really trying to find ways to have that coaching so that teachers that come in new have someone that they could talk to, have someone that they could collaborate with. I think that's extremely important. When you lose 120 to 160 teachers a year, that hurt us. And it actually costs money if you think about it mathematically. So that would be the first thing that I would do.
Thank you. Ms. Casimir? And my question is, share with us one of the challenges you face in your current role that you think will help you in your new role.
Yeah, I thought about that question many times. Time. It's hard when you're doing two different roles to really focus on something specific. And so, yes, I'm running 11 schools actually now, and we're making it work. And we're spending a lot of time. I just left my office a couple of minutes ago, and I had a bite to eat on the way here. But if I had more time to devote to mathematics, then we could do more with it. I could go more into classrooms. I could spend more time with principals. Not that I'm not doing that, but I think spending more meaningful time across the entire district, it's probably more worthwhile, and it's going to create more growth throughout than trying to run 11 schools, trying to do the math, and trying to do all the other things that come with the current job. Listen, I love what I do, and I will do it anytime. But when this opportunity came, I thought of it as a good way to give back, and so that's the main reason.
Well, thank you, Mr. Planis, for interviewing with us today. This concludes our questions. As I've shared with the previous candidate, that the board will make recommendations to the superintendent. She ultimately has a final decision, but we will make recommendations. From there, you'll receive information from HR what are our next steps. But other than that, thank you for continuing to serve in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Our next candidate is Ms. Lynn Stevens for Director of Adult Education. Hi, Ms. Lynn, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So I'm going to repeat the same thing, though. This position also requires executive session, so we'll continue to take the vote just for the record. And you can decide if you want to have it in an executive session or not. It's totally up to you. Board members, according to our bylaws, you have to go, but we will vote anyway. Board member, would someone like to make a motion to go in executive session for this interview?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Traver. Second by Ms. Perez. Are there any questions or concerns?
None.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry, not aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
I abstain. Ms. Lynn, it's up to you. What would you like?
I'm fine with the
Okay. All right. So same thing I said with the previous candidates. You will receive the same questions. Board members will stay consistent, and then we'll open it up for members that are not on the board, not on the committee. And just as we've mentioned before, please share something that we don't already know about you, because we received your resume and your cover letter. So it's really anything that you want us to know that we don't already know.
Sure.
All right. Gorgeous.
So one thing you don't know about me is in my resume, it doesn't represent how passionate I am about the Bridgeport community and adult education. When I first came here, I was amazed at the number of staff members that had been here for such a long period of time. And I quickly realized why. It's because it's a wonderful community to work with. It's a wonderful community of families, and it's a wonderful community of staff members as well. So I'm here. And but the other piece of it is that I'm very passionate about adult education. I've had the opportunity to work in adult education for 13 years, and I've often shared with people that it's really an opportunity to push your sleeves up and work with individuals with where they're at. And it's just, you meet amazing individuals. You're able to assist them in many aspects of their life, and you see the struggles that they've been through and how hard they've worked. The other piece of it, which I think is not really very visible to people, is that it's really a multi-generational program. I was just looking at our Bridgeport's program profile from last year for adult education. And 63% of our students in adult education are parents, so they have children within the district. So I immediately go to, okay, how can we support these parents? How can we teach them about how to work with their children in school around absenteeism and engagement? So to me, I see opportunities to assist families far beyond earning their diploma or learning the English language.
Thank you so much for sharing. We'll start the questions. Ms. Burrows.
What would be your top priority?
So one of my top priorities would definitely be around workforce development. When students enter into adult education, I firmly believe that while they might be here to earn the English language, they might be here to earn a diploma, what they're really here for is to better their lives for themselves and for their families. And that means what are the next steps to after they graduate. When I work with students, I would see them light up as soon as we started talking about what those next steps were. So I really, in my prior role in adult education, I developed a workforce development program with a job shadow internship opportunity for students. I collaborated with community agencies, with the workforce board, and with community college, and we developed an individualized plan for individuals to go into the workforce if that was their choice. So that's really the direction that I would head for sure. And I've already actually, in my interim role, been able to engage and create an avenue to start that process.
Thanks. Mr. Trevor?
I think you've already answered my question about why you think you're the most qualified candidate, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do. Again, based on my prior experience, but in that experience, I was able to, in developing this program, and actually was recognized as a state model. I was awarded the Educator of the Year award for this model and my other initiatives in adult education. And again, I think it goes back to my willingness to develop a program. So I'm always looking at things as how can we improve this? What's working and what's not working? And that similarly in entering into this program, I think it's very important that I just take a step back and look and work with staff members to better understand the needs of the program, what's working and what's not working. And again, I love the Bridgeport community. I love the staff. They've been very accepting and welcoming, and I feel like I can make a big difference here as well.
Thank you. Ms. Casimir? And my question is, share with us share a challenge that you currently faced in your current role, and how will that help you if you're selected for this role?
You know, I think probably one of the biggest challenges I see is there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information coming right now. There's a lot of new information to learn. I'm a very organized person, so I tend to try to be strategic about what I do. So I think that developing systems is an area of strength, but it's also a challenge because there's a lot of systems that need to be put in place. And then I think the other piece of that too is I take on a lot. I like to do a lot. I like to get things done. So I need to focus on delegating. I have a support team. I have actually an excellent support team. They're hard workers. They know the system. And I want to make sure that I'm valuing all of the expertise within the adult education program.
Thank you. That ends all of our questions from the board. Same thing that I shared with the previous candidates. I have to say on the record. The board does not make the final selection. The selection is left up to the superintendent. However, the board will give recommendations or thoughts to the superintendent concerning this role. You will hear from HR on next steps. We wish you all the best. Thank you for continuing to serve our community.
Thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. And our next candidate is Michelle. I'm going to butcher your last name, so I don't know. Okay.
The next few candidates are all traveling towards us from their out of town. They're coming into, and she's not scheduled until 7 o'clock.
Okay. Oh, yes, we are.
Sorry.
So the next candidates aren't from start at 7. So I'm wondering
The agenda.
we can. Would someone like to make a motion?
What would you like to go to next?
We can start with our contracts.
Can we move to item 4 on the agenda, the approval of the contract with Southern Connecticut State University?
Is there a second? Second. Any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, we are going to move the agenda to start a contract process, so I'm not sure who's.
Can I amend my motion?
Okay. Mr. Chair.
I realized that Ms. Anna Souza Martins is here for a presentation of this. Having looked at the materials, I suspect a half hour would be good.
To give it.
I don't know how long the Southern, is there somebody here for the Southern one?
That's a contract.
We'll present, I don't know if it's gonna take a half an hour. I don't know if you need a half an hour
I
presentation.
don't know. That's what I was wondering.
It's up
Who
to
can we get set
fill the
free?
time.
Who can we set free?
Yeah, we can set this, Martin, you can set it free. I should appreciate it.
So.
Right, that's what I was thinking suddenly is, instead of going to the next one on the agenda,
Okay.
is there somebody that we can set free
Yeah.
by moving? So I amend my motion. Would you, Ms. Perez, entertain a friendly amendment to go to item 5 on the agenda regarding the referral to the full board for approval of interpretation and translation company per the RFP for all BPS staff and families?
And you just
Just a yes.
yes.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So now we need to vote on the main motion, which is,
Well, first we need to vote on friendly.
oh, let's vote on the friendly amendment. Are there any questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
None,
Hearing
amendment.
none. Now let's vote on the main motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, I vote aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none.
Aye.
You have the floor.
Fine.
We're on item 5.
Thank you. So I am presenting this evening our recommendation for interpretation and translation company services. In the past, we have worked with 2 companies. However, we are moving forward with a new RFP that was advertised March 2023. As a result, we received 13 competitive bids. And we created a committee to review the 13 proposals. As a result, we, based on criteria, which was the ranking of the service design, experience of staff, references from customers, cost, and methodology, we were able to select one of the 13 companies that we felt was is going to serve us well in Bridgeport and for our families. I will tell you a little bit about this company. The name of the company is Bay State Interpreters. They are out of Massachusetts. They have experience, they have over 20 years of experience. They work with similar districts like Bridgeport Public Schools. They're working currently with New Haven Public Schools. They work with DCF and other agencies in Connecticut. They also work with other public schools in Massachusetts, such as Brockton, which is very similar to Bridgeport. As a result, they are able to provide us with interpretation and translation because they hire over 20,000 qualified interpreters. They train their interpreters not only with interpretation practices, but with technology, so that they're able to provide us with any type of technology that we may require. They offer a secure platform. They also provide a very easy, simple request form to complete. If we cannot complete that form requesting interpretation, they offer you can call and request on demand. So if we have a parent come into our building and at that time, we don't have the flexibility of getting on a computer and requesting the services, we can pick up the phone, call them, and within a few minutes, they will have an interpreter on the line. They offer 24/7, 365 days a year services. They provide, again, they provide over 250 languages. Many of the languages are a representative of our families. One unique interpretation translation service that they do provide is ASL, American Sign Language, which not every company was able to provide that. We are receiving families and children who do have hearing impairment. So that will definitely be of value to our district. In addition, their system is permission-based. So whoever uses the system will need to receive permission to use it. What I thought was interesting is that they offer tools for upper level staff to approve staff requests so that we can monitor. They also allow us to track. They have analytics built into their system, so we can actually collect data. So the beauty too is if one particular school or one particular teacher uses a specific interpreter and they like that person, they will then start assigning that person as a default. So they don't have to request that particular interpreter. The other thing that stood out to the committee was that they have worked for 7 years on tailoring their system and operations to meet the educational needs. So not just agencies, but they are able to provide us with interpretation and translation that can be with very specific, specialized terminology. So that's wonderful. They offer training to the staff here who's going to be using interpretation translation services, and they also have self-guided procedures. They offer, and the last thing that I thought was a highlight is they provide an escalation and resolution policy for immediate assistance and resolution. Nice. So that is something that in the past we've encountered some difficulty with. And then finally, they offer in-person, telephonic, virtual options. They also will translate documents within 48 hours.
It's really nice. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll open up for committee members to ask questions. Ms. Perez? Mr. Traber?
Yeah, if I understood correctly, your presentation, they were the most expensive. Really?
No, they're competitive. Their cost is very competitive. They're pretty much all within $10 difference of each other. So for example, they will charge for in-person.
No, I take your word for it. I'm not really, you had highlighted the yellow 201. It seems significantly more than the rest. So I thought that meant that they were more expensive, but you were arguing that they provided a superior service for that.
Yes.
So I just wanted to check and see if I understood. So obviously I understood somewhat. And then I had a question about the standards you were using.
Yes.
In the little individual sheets, reference from customers.
Yes.
How does that work? Because I noticed some of them had zeros and some of them had scores. Was that like customer feedback or?
Yes. So most companies submitted customer recommendation letters or letters of recommendation. Others did not.
Got it.
So if they did not, because I noticed there were some that had like really high scores on the other criteria, but those were zeros. And I thought, oh, well, that's weird. You would think they would have pretty good customers too, unless they were new companies or they just didn't have much of a track record.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, I saw what you said. You left out Boston. I think they had Boston in there too, right?
They have, yes, they have several, and they have a letter, a recommendation letter from, New Haven Public Schools.
Yep, I
stating
saw that.
they highly recommend.
I saw that. Okay, that's all I have.
Ms. Casimir, any questions?
You mentioned 250 languages and American Sign Language. Just wondering about Braille for people who are blind.
That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that, but I can certainly get it to get you that
Just
answer.
wondering.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I see that Ms. Baptiste Perez has joined us. Do you have any questions for Ms. Martin?
No questions.
All right, and let the record reflect Ms. Baptiste Perez has joined us. And I don't know if there's any other board members. I can't tell. I just see her picture. Everybody else is staff?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I don't have any questions either. I remember, oh, Mr. Traver got a question.
Did you have one?
Okay, I'll go. Okay. I don't have any questions. I remember when we first started like this whole entire process. So to see that we have decided on pursuing this, I think is really good. I think with the way that the culture and climate is just of Bridgeport public students, this is so needed. And one of the areas that was very important to me, if you remember, was the PPTs. Like having that support for parents in there who need that sense, because language is a sense of advocacy. So having that for parents who are not familiar with the everyday language is important. So I'm very, very, very pleased with knowing that this is where we are now. And, you know, I'm just, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Traver.
Do we have any American Sign Language interpreters on staff anymore?
I can't answer that. I believe we do not have any currently on staff.
Okay.
But again, I'm not accurate with
Okay.
that.
Having worked with one in the past, I know that we used to, so I was just curious.
Yes, I know, I believe, I know who you're referring to. I'm not sure if she's still in the
And I want to echo what Ms. Brown said about how important this is, not just for the students and the parents, but for the staff people who are prevented from doing their job because they get pulled out to go do interpretation on a moment's notice and therefore can't go do their job teaching the students they're assigned. So this will be of great value to everybody. So I'm very excited to hear this is moving forward.
All right. Thank you. If you have nothing else, board members, would someone like to make a motion?
I make that motion.
Second, all in favor? Wait, are there any comments? Further comments or questions? Oh, come. I'm like,
Way in the back of the room.
yes.
We do have teachers of the hearing impaired. They would only translate if necessary. Their primary responsibility is to the child.
Got it.
So this partnership with Bay State could support us if the teacher of the hearing impaired is not in a particular school.
Yeah, but we actually used to have interpreters too. I had one student in my class who had a one-on-one interpreter assigned to him.
We have parents, yes, but it's not common.
No, I know. it
in
wasn't.
So yes, we do.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
Dr.
All right, so if there are no further questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, Ms. Martin will be added to the meeting for Tuesday, because Monday's a holiday, Tuesday, and then we'll just ask, you probably have to present again, smaller version, but yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Do we have anyone else waiting?
Um,
Is there anyone else we can free?
is Dr. Jenkins, are you presenting?
Mr. Dunn.
Raise the hand.
Mr. Denson, what's your item? Yes. Number 7.
I move that we discuss item 7 next.
Second.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Mr. Denton, you have the floor.
Evening. I'm James Denton, the newly appointed Director of Phys Ed Athletics and Health. I appreciate everyone's support in making that job a reality. I'm presenting tonight an agreement with GoFan. It's a digital ticketing company. It will allow us to charge entry to our athletic events without having to handle the cash. The reason we went with, or the reason I reached out to GoFan was they partner with the CIAC, which is the governing body of athletics for the state of Connecticut. They partner with Arbiter. All our schedules will go right through Arbiter, and GoFan will get them, and it's all integrated. There's no apps that the end customer has to download. They're going to give us 4 iPads and Wi-Fi connections.
Nice.
And there is no charge to the district. There is a $1 charge to the person that purchases the ticket. So whatever we decide the ticket price will be, it'll be plus $1. If the contract goes on for 3 years, there's no terms of, do we have to, we really don't even have to sell any tickets if we don't want to use it. We can still collect cash if we would like to. After 3 years, it will renew unless either side would like to get out of the agreement. I did present the contract to the city attorney, and they reviewed it, and they didn't have any objection to anything. They just they recommended that we ask for there's a liability insurance that they supply on request. Other than that, the city attorney's office was okay with it.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Mr. Denton. I'll open up for committee members and board members to ask any questions. Mr. Chamber, any questions?
Just out of curiosity, how much do we charge for events?
$5 for adults, $3 for children. We only charge for basketball games and football games. Other towns charge for other sports, soccer, So it would have to be a venue where you could control the gates. So, we probably couldn't charge for our baseball games, but we could charge for volleyball and soccer if we wanted to.
Okay. Ms. Perez?
Will we keep those same prices and then add the dollar?
Yeah, yes. I would keep the same price and just add the fee goes to the company.
Okay.
So the end user, instead of paying 5, will pay 6.
Okay. Ms. Casimir, any questions?
Liability insurance, what's that for specifically?
I don't know, I suppose if there was some kind of lawsuit against us, the company would provide the coverage.
Maybe data breach, perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions?
No.
All right, I don't have any questions. Oh, Mr. Traver?
So, but you did check the liability question, or you still need to before the
No,
it's presented to the full board?
the city attorney advised that there's a clause in there that says we can request liability coverage. And he said just, we should request it. And I already reached out to the company and did so.
And they agreed?
Yeah, they offered it. But it's like, if you don't ask for it, they don't give it to you. The thought would be eventually that we would be all digital and no cash.
Why would we want to do cash?
I don't want to do cash. I would like to go all digital, but I was just thinking as far as the learning curve, I would hate to have someone
Somebody show up and not be able to get it right.
I'd hate to tell someone you can't come in and,
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think, probably in the initial implementation, we would still accept cash payments. But we'll be able to take a card right at the door, someone can swipe in, or they can go online, buy it ahead of time. It's pretty much the standard across the state right now.
Okay, so I didn't have a question, but I do have a question now. So I know that we can buy tickets. So for example, we can buy tickets online. Is there any process where if the tickets are bought online, they show up at the door and they are children or need to be an adult? I know that was an issue in the past on whether or not students need to be with adults, that case. And I don't know if that, is there like a verification? Okay, I'll let you explain.
I discussed that with the company, and we could put on the app or on the, whatever they pull up online, the terms that, under 18 is not admitted without an adult.
Got it.
We could reserve the right, to not let, unattended children into the game, however we want to word it. Besides athletics, it could be used for a host of other activities in the school building, field trips, fundraising, dances. It could be used for anything you need to collect money for, fundraising.
Okay, all right. No further questions?
Move to refer to the full board.
Second by Ms. Perez. Any further questions? No, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, it will be added at the Tuesday meeting. We may need to come and do a small presentation on it, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have 10 minutes. I don't know what else do we have.
I can present on something.
Okay, you think we can do it in 10 minutes?
Of course.
Okay, all right, so Ms. Dixon will be presenting on
Item 5.
item 5.
No, I'm sorry.
Wait.
It was item 4.
Item 4.
So we move to your item 4 on the agenda next.
Is there a second? Second, any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, Ms. Dixon, you have the floor.
Good evening. So we have entered in a contract, or we'd like to enter a contract continuing in Southern Connecticut. This is our tuition reimbursement plan to entice certified teachers to get cross-endorsed in special education, which is one of our major shortage areas. So as part of this program, we covered the tuition, portion of the tuition, and in return, they are committed to remain with the City of Bridgeport's public school district for 3 years. For each year they remain with us teaching for special education. The amount that we cover is prorated per year. If they leave prior to the 3-year commitment, then they will owe us the remaining amount. In addition to the tuition reimbursement, we do also offer them a step increase in salary. Last year was our initial one that we did, and we did have approximately, I think we started out with 10 candidates and ended with 9 teachers who became cross-endorsed in special ed, who remain teaching in special ed. This year, I believe we have 1 so far, but we hope to maybe in the next, as this next semester, perhaps we'll have more.
Anything else? No? Okay, so I'll open it up for board members, committee members and board members. Mr. Traber, any
No
questions? Ms. Press?
Might have answered this about scrolling, but if they do the cross endorsement, is there a requirement for them to stay on the district for a certain time?
Yes, I do actually do that. One of the other things we have in Southern is also, part of it is a parent-teacher contract partnership, where if you're a paraprofessional, you enroll in their program and we offset the salary again. And you start as a para, then you transition to a teacher working on the durational shortage permit area, and then you gain certification. So we have currently we have 4. And then enrolled in this upcoming year, we hope to have, I believe, there's 4 or 5.
Ms. Castaner, any questions?
Seems like a slam dunk to me. And they're the same commitment, same commitments that they have to remain with Bridgeport Public Schools for, I believe, 3 years, and we offset their, cost that we cover during that.
Thank you. Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions? Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions?
No.
Okay. Mr. Traber?
You first, but
Okay.
your turn.
I don't have any questions. I will just echo, you've been through this process with us. This is something that we have been in dire need of for a very, very long time, and just making sure that this can possibly help us increase our teachers, but also to put a special light on special education. So I'm really, really happy that this is something that we will be doing and continuing to do. And I hope it expands, because I know we started with Southern, but we need them all over the place. So
We are, and
So-
I'll give you a little heads up, we are working with the, hopefully University of Hartford as
Nice,
well.
nice.
There. And I think what's really special about part of this is tapping into our staff here, the paraprofessionals who have been working with our special needs children for years, who may not have known the possibilities of the route or the financial abilities to become a teacher. This is allowing them that opportunity, and in return, they're continuing to give back to our community.
that's amazing. Mr. Traber?
Okay, well, now I have a couple questions. You said we had 4 paras, then you said 4 or 5. So I want you to clarify that first, maybe to begin with.
So last year, we did the pilot, we had 4. This year, we have 4, possibly 5. We are still, I believe we're waiting to confirm the possibility of 1 more.
Okay, and so then I think I misunderstood you initially. The paras are paras training to be special ed teachers,
Correct.
not paras training to be general ed teachers.
Correct. These are paras to special ed teachers.
Is there any thought given to training paras to be regular teachers in the same fashion? Because we do have a shortage of regular teachers too.
No, because the paras, a lot of them are special educational
I
programs.
understand that fit. I do. I support that. I applaud it. I just know that when I was president working with the HR director back then, and way before my time, there are some teachers I know are currently working who were paras that became regular ed teachers.
We do not have that.
There were programs at different points in the past. And I know when I was president, there were 100 to 150 paras with bachelor's degrees already, that anything we can do to help them become regular, given our shortage, given our desire for diversity, 95+% of those paras were people raised in Bridgeport.
Right, we'll definitely continue to search for those programs. Unfortunately, these programs are just focusing on.
No, I understand. No, and I applaud that. I just misunderstood initially when you switched to the paras.
Any further questions? Nope. All right. Would someone like to make the motion?
To refer that to the full board for approval.
Second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. This will be added to the agenda. You know, the same process. You'll have to present for the full board, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we should be at the 7. We have 2 minutes. So would you be okay with starting 2 minutes? All right, come on over.
Sorry.
Oh, wait, okay, she's gone.
I'm still here. I could have presented in 2 minutes, but we will wait. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. We're going, I'm sorry, we're going back to our interviews. Hey,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Hi.
Yeah, we're going back.
Understood.
Yes,
Understood. We'll wait.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's 2 minutes. Oh, sorry, it's just 2 minutes. Sorry. So we are now interviewing for, Miss Michelle, can you please?
I know, it's a doozy, Zanauskas.
Zanauskas, okay. All right, I will Ms. Sanowski. All right, so, and she's interviewed for the position of Director of Literacy. I'll explain what we've done with previous candidates, and this will also apply for you as well. The board will give you questions. These questions will stay consistent, and then we'll open it up the floor for any members that are not on the committee to ask questions. This can go into executive session, so we'll take that vote, and then you can decide whether or not you want to do an executive session or in person. All right, so is there a motion to go into executive session? Second, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? I abstain. What would you like? Oh, so you want to do it in person? You can do it in person. If you want to do it behind closed doors, you can do that too.
Sure, I'm flexible.
Okay, perfect. Even better. Okay, all right, so we'll start the question. So what we're gonna do is your resume has already been provided to committee members. So what we ask is that if you can just, in a couple words, tell us a little bit about yourself that's not already captured in your resume or your cover letter, something that we should know.
Sure.
All right, floor is yours.
Thank you.
I shared this with the interview committee when I first interviewed that what you won't see on my resume is the fact that I am a first generation college graduate who grew up in poverty and knew very early on that education was going to be the way out of poverty for me. And so I have spent my entire life, not just my career, working around literacy specifically because I know that literacy is what has me here today. It's what afforded me every opportunity that I couldn't financially afford. I also shared with the interview committee that I am completing my doctorate right now in educational leadership, and I'm partnered with a Bridgeport resource that works with formerly incarcerated individuals to find them housing and employment. And I've been interested in Bridgeport for a few years, and that's something I mentioned as well. So I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll open up to committee members to ask their questions. Ms. Perez?
What would be one of your top priorities for this role?
I spoke about this as well, that I think, one, we need to see what we do well and what we need to work on. And in order to do that, we need multiple data points. So that looks like disaggregating data, finding out where our pockets are, what we do well, and where we can really improve. I wouldn't jump into overhaul or changes initially. I think I'd want to see a large scale impact before that would be a priority for sure. And I also mentioned that I think I'd like to get into the buildings. I'd like to immerse myself, become familiar with the way that things are done here, and just acclimate first.
Thank you. Mr. Traver?
Tell us why you think you're the most qualified candidate.
I'm the most qualified because while I may have similar career accolades, educational accolades, I have the personal experience unlike anyone else. I have it from my own personal experience. I have it from fostering and adopting my children through DCF and seeing it through that lens. I have it through academia lens of looking at what research tells us about literacy. So I think the breadth of my experience really is what makes me the best candidate and sets me apart.
Thank you. Ms. Kessler, any questions?
Thank you. Well, they're adopted now. Never mind.
Yeah, Ms. Baptiste Perez, do you have any questions? Ms. Baptiste Perez? All right, so I'll ask my question.
Sure.
My question is, just want to make sure I read it right. Share how you handle a challenge in your current role and how has that experience prepared you for this role?
I think one of the challenges sometimes is that you don't listen first.
And so in challenging situations, working with educators, district leadership, building leadership, I think what I do well is I listen before I offer a solution, offer what I think might be the next steps, offer what the research says. I'm able to take it in because I think it's important that you understand what people are saying and what they aren't saying. That's equally important. So that's how I address any challenge. I also believe in transparency. I believe in partnership. I'm just a partner with everyone. There is no me versus my role and versus them. We're working together to just meet the goal. So I'm in it with them. I'm right there beside them. And I think that's how you overcome challenges.
Great. Thank you. So this concludes the question part of our interview. As I shared with previous candidates, the board does not make the final decision. That decision lies with the superintendent. However, the board will provide recommendations based off of your interview today. You will hear from HR on further steps, next steps in this process. Other than that, thank you for interviewing with us, and we wish you all the best. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you.
We say our candidate is here. We are a little bit early, but would you like to, we can start with you? Yep, all right. So our next candidate is Miss Katisha Howard, and she is going for assistant principal for Dunbar. All right, so everything I said, I'm going to repeat. I know you were sitting there, but I have to do it for the record. The way this will go is we will ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself that's not already captured in your resume or in your cover letter. And then also the committee members will ask you one question. That question has been consistent, even though you weren't here previously, but we want to remind you that it has been consistent with other interviewees. And you have the opportunity to have this meeting in executive session or in person. We will make oh, wait. Oh, no, you're not. So okay, you're good. I don't have to say a speech. Oh, all right. So you're good. So at this moment, you can share with us something that's not already captured in your resume. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So as you say, my name is Katisha Howard. I am currently school contract at Bridgeport Military Academy. I have been in education for over 21 years. One or a couple of things that you will not see in my resume is I am currently an adjunct professor teaching second and third year graduate students at Southern Connecticut State University. I grew up on the east end of Bridgeport, Connecticut. That's where I started my career. And my elementary school is Blessed Sacrament St. Mary's School, which shares the exact same, it's on the exact same street as Dunbar, Paul Lawrence Dunbar Elementary School, but just at the opposite end. And right around the corner on Central Avenue, I was at one point the interim executive director and senior program director of the Ralph Waldo Taylor Center. And in those instances, we shared facilities. So I'm aware of their parent programs. I'm aware of that community. I started my leadership in that, my leadership experience, in that community. I remember when there was no Dunbar there. That's how much I know the history of that area. And I also am a huge advocate for mentorship. And a number of my students who are currently producing programs and services for the greater Bridgeport community, they are now providing those same services. So I think mentoring is important. It shows that they saw something that was impactful and they wanted to in turn make that change in their community. They wanted to pay it forward. So those would be the things that you probably would see on my resume.
Awesome. Thank you. So at this moment, committee members, we'll start with Mr. Travers. Would you like to share your question?
Tell us why you're the most qualified person for this position.
I'm the most qualified person for this position because I am a change agent. I have been placed in several challenging environments and I've succeeded, whether it was supporting in the aspects of supporting teachers, designing and implementing programs, and or introducing the schools to the community and introducing the community to the schools. It's a natural progression for me. I feel that I earned that status, I've earned that role, I have crawled, I've been a teacher, I have been a program director, I've been in schools, I've sat at tables with several levels of leadership, and I've chaired and been chairwoman, for example, of Bridgeport's anti-bullying committee. I was one of the chairwomen for that committee. So I'm ready. I'm assertive, I'm firm and clear. I support my teachers, respect and support my students. And I love Bridgeport and I love this community, and I will continue to be a lifelong advocate and educator.
Thank you. Ms. Perez?
Ms. Howard, what would be one of your top priorities for Dunbar?
So one of my top priorities for Dunbar would definitely be the culture and the climate, and ways that we can improve the culture and climate. I know a lot of that has to do with having those conversations, being transparent, but also being vocal, being visual, listening to a lot of their concerns, because I know it can be a challenge. They have had challenging experiences, and I'll leave it at that. I know that it's imperative that from day one, I start fostering relationships or establishing relationships, but definitely listening. I am the type of person, I know that side of town, so I know there are several instances where I can meet parents and students where they are, and that means outside of the school building. It may not be Monday through Friday, it can be on the weekend, but I am aware of the different programs and activities and services that they have there. And yes.
Thank you. Ms. Casimir, any questions? Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions for the candidate? Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions for the candidate? Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions for the candidate? All right, so I'll do my question, and I'm going to read it just because I've been butchering it, and I'm going to butcher it. Share how you handled a challenge in your current role, and how will you use that experience in your new position?
Okay, so a challenge that I had in my current role was in the spring of 2022. The superintendent at that time we had an executive director, and the executive director, I came downstairs at 7:15, and I was going to review with him the draft that I had and how we were going to administer SATs. And I stepped in the office, and he said, "Did you get the email?" And he's standing there, and I said, "The email?" I'm like, "No, I didn't get the email. I'm just here so that we can review the draft before the school day starts." And he showed me the email, and he said that he used to report to another school, and I was to take the lead in the building. That was at 7:15, and I needed to open the school at 7:43. So I asked him if there was any way for me to kind of get it together, because when you walk into a school, as a counselor, you have a caseload and you are responsible for your caseload of students. But when you are a leader, you are literally responsible for every single person in that building and every person that walks in and out of that building. So he gave me 10 minutes. I got it together, and I was able to open the school. All the other questions that needed to be asked, I asked afterward, because I felt at that point in time, the students are who were most important, and the staff were most important. And I didn't need them to see the breakdown in leadership. At the time, I felt that I could do the job. I could take on the responsibility. I had been acting and or sub-principal for the past, at that time, it was 2 years. Now it's been 3 years now. I knew the environment. I knew the temperament of the building. And I had the trust of the teachers, and I supported the teachers. And what I said to them was, "Guys, what do you want? This is what you want to teach." I said, "Well, I'll make sure you're able to teach. I'll take care of the hallways. I'll take care of the parents. I will create a climate that's conducive to learn." And that's what I did. Teacher attendance improved, student attendance improved. I had implemented restorative practices so that when the principal did come back, she was able to just literally move forward with what she needed to do with her students. So that was a challenge. It showed that I was able to pivot. I was adaptable. I knew how to keep my mouth shut and just have business continue with business. I asked my question, appropriately and at a more appropriate time, but I made sure that I handled my responsibilities. I was without a school counselor because I had moved up in the role, and I was without a social worker. So I had to think about those students that had IEPs and had social work, written into their IEPs. There were a number of things that I had to think about, but needless to say, I did what I needed to do. That one day turned into 3 months. And yes, so that was a challenge, but those are the reasons why, how I would recover that, and why it made me a strong leader, and it prepared me for where I am now and for able to present myself.
Thank you so much. This concludes the ending of our questions. Thank you so much for interviewing with us and serving within our community. I'll just share with you, the board does not make the final decision. We do provide recommendation to the superintendent concerning the position. So you will hear from HR what next steps are. Without further ado, thank you so much and good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next candidate, we're actually above time-ish, that candidate here. Okay, so with some,
Waiting up there in the corner for us to.
is that the candidate on?
No.
No, that was Nadira.
Oh, that was Ms. Nadira. So then we do have another contract item with
Which
someone.
item is that?
That should be the number 8, classical studies. And then we have nutrition. Let's do classical studies.
Okay, so I move that we discuss item number 8, the referral to the full board of a subcontract to Carver Foundation for Classical Studies Academy Extended School Hours Program.
Second, any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Ms. Clark, you have the floor. I didn't know that was you up there, but hey.
It's me, the orange camouflaged me today. Thank you so very much and giving me space this evening to talk about the Carver partnership. This is an ongoing partnership. I do have Principal Ulrich Peloso Ulrich, and as well to answer any additional questions you may have about this. So we've been funding Carver for several years. They've been doing the ESH program at Classical. It's a wonderful program. It's been servicing at least about 150 students. Carver Foundation is out of Norwalk, but they were brought on, as I mentioned, several years ago to expand the afternoon program at Classical. And Ms. Peloso Ulrich can give us some more information.
Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Carver's been involved in classical studies since 2018, and it's been providing a successful youth development program for our students. It complements the school day with certified classical studies teachers. So they're providing academics, literacy, math, technology, engineering, recreation, wellness programs are just some of the few things that the program provides for them. The program runs we're proposing that the program runs from October 16th through May 23rd, and it meets Mondays through Thursdays from 3:10 to 5:10. And Carver provides the after-school students with free transportation home, and the program is free to our students. This program is for grades 3 to 6.
Any further information, Ms. Clark?
Yes, just confirmation. This is our standard agreement. It has been blessed. There's nothing additional or new. Any specific changes, if after the board reviews it and has any concerns, please, we'll be happy to make those changes. The total amount of this proposed subcontract is $110,007.
We'll open it now to committee members. Mr. Traber, do you have any questions for Ms. Clark or the presenter?
Yes. What year did you say they started working with us?
In 2018.
18, that's what I thought you said. And so I think I missed this. They sort of replaced our original intent, or they augmented our original intent in classical studies. The original intent was an extended day, 4 days a week. Did they replace that, or are they augmented? Is I guess what I'm asking, because I missed it.
Right, to some extent they replaced it because back then the complete model of classical was changing. This was the ancillary program that was put in. And so we are presenting Carver because of the price point. There are some other programs that's servicing the other campuses that are below the threshold, so it's not coming to the board. So Principal Peloso Ulrich could give us a little more detail if you're questioning what are the additional holistic program that we have. Carver just happens to be that one part that's over the threshold that requires this part of it.
Okay, no, it's more a matter of curiosity on my part. It's not a matter of approving this particular grant request that you're putting to us. Just my own curiosity. I actually applied for a position when the classical studies originally opened, and so I was curious as to how it had changed over the years. So it's not relevant now. I can talk about it later.
Certainly we'll be able to have.
Okay, Ms. Perez, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Casimir, any questions?
Yeah, the George Washington Carver Center has been around for how long? I know when my kids, but they're 29 and 27 now, my kids, but I know they were around when they were small. But when did the Carver Center start?
As far as I have in my notes, I'm seeing 2008. They may have been around earlier than that. They definitely came into Bridgeport and to providing services to classical in 2018.
I know they have a good reputation. All right, thank you.
Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions? Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions? And Ms. Baptiste Perez, any questions? All right, hearing none. I don't have a question. I am interested to further see what Carver continues to bring for our district. I am very new to this in Bridgeport, but in other areas I have heard of it. So thank you so much for sharing. And if there's no further questions, would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we refer to the full board approval of a subcontract to the Carver Foundation for Classical Studies Academy Extended School Hours Program.
Second. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you staying on, Ms. Clark, for one more, yes?
No, I don't have anything else. My others are tabled for the next meeting.
Perfect, okay.
Yep.
So right now, Ms. Dixon is our candidate here. Okay, so our candidate here, we're a couple of minutes early. We can start, or we can go for another item. You would like to start your interview? All right, so go ahead, Mr. Faber.
We're going to executive session.
No. So the candidate is Dr. Angela Skyers, is for assistant superintendent. Hi. I just want to share, you can have a seat. Just want to share just a little bit of how the process will go. Yeah, I'll still do the preliminaries. How it works is the committee will ask you one question. That one question will stay consistent, has been consistent with all other interviews. What we'll also do is ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself that's not already covered in your resume or cover letter. And then once that starts, we'll further out the process. Here's what will happen is the board will take a vote to have this done in executive session. You have the choice to choose not to have an executive session or have it in executive session. It's up to you. So would someone like to make a motion?
So move.
Second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? I abstain.
Abstain.
All right, and it's up to you. Would you like to, what's your preference?
Executive session, please.
Okay. All right, so we'll go into executive session. I believe the room is occupied. Yes. Is there another room?
We have that room.
It's no one's in there? Let's just give us a second. Thank you, Ms. Rita. So this one is.
We'll have the thought exchange. Whatever.
No, we still have one. So that's one.
That's it, yeah.
Okay. We're good? All right. Oh, so the members that are going to executive session is committee members, myself, Mr. Chamber, and Ms. Perez. concluded that interview, superintendent, we will have some follow-up things for you. We'll send to you via email. Now we're going to move on to our next candidate. Our next candidate is Dr. Wait, what time is it? Yeah. Is he here? Dr. Superintendent, we will have some
Dr. Boyce Avery, who's here for the interim deputy superintendent. Is here.
Do the studies.
Okay, so what we'll do is we will go and finish the agenda items to give Dr. an opportunity to come. Would someone like to make that motion?
Move that we consider item 6, discussion and possible referral to the full board for approval for the thought exchange.
Second. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, I am not sure who's presenting on this item. I do see a face that I'm not familiar with online. I can see a hand raised. Sorry, if you could just say who you are, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my name is James Haga. I'm with Thought Exchange.
Okay, yes, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for giving me some of your time this evening. I really appreciate it. Welcome to my basement in my house in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Very pleased to have the opportunity to share a little bit about Thought Exchange with you tonight, and hopefully in the time that we have, also give you an applied experience of the tool, what it means, how it works, what it looks like, so that you can leave this evening's meeting with a much more comprehensive understanding of what this is. I'm going to do a few things. So first, I'm going to just provide a high-level overview so that you have a firm understanding of the concept and of really how this works. And then we'll move into a very quick demonstration where you'll have a chance to use the tool. Hopefully everybody has either a phone or a device accessible to them. So I'm just going to give you a heads up that at that point, I'm going to ask you to use either your phone or your tablet or your laptop to participate in a thought exchange. And then lastly, I'll just show you what the data.
One second, sorry. Yes.
Do you need me to give you a little bit of background on Thought Exchange?
Yes. We're on page 181. 181. So just give us 1 second. The superintendent's going to give us a little background as to why this is being brought to the board. Sorry, I thought you were like the person, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I saw the puzzling glances and I realized I probably should have given them a little bit of background as to why you're presenting Thought Exchange to them. So for several years in the district, we've used Panorama for student surveys, and we've had a great deal of challenge and what I've learned through my conversations and my visits throughout the communication in the district. The Thought Exchange platform is a platform that provides the ability to not only deliver surveys if that's what we want to do, but also actually conduct two-way, multi-way conversations throughout our organization and throughout the community. And it's a very user-friendly platform with data analytics that are very easy to comprehend and easy to access. And I wanted to make sure that we were able to look at it and see it. I wanted to present this in lieu of Panorama because of all of the additional flexibility that it provides and offers, and because it would meet our need to ensure that we are providing better communication with all of our stakeholders, not just our students that we survey or parents, but it's a tool that principals can use easily at their campus. It's a tool that any central office leader could use with their division in order to have conversations, discussions, and gather data. And I don't want to steal their thunder because they'll do a much better job at this than I will. But if we're going to spend money on a tool that gathers feedback or delivers surveys and that we have to use for the compliance pieces that we have to execute, I would like to have something that has a multi-purpose use that we can actually scale according to the needs of the district. So that was the reason why I've worked with this company before in other districts, and I really, really love their platform, and I wanted to present it to the board.
Thank you so much, Dr. Levy.
Next question.
Yes.
Mr. Trevor.
So are we in a period of changing contracts?
This is,
Would we be?
our contract with Panorama has expired, so we are no longer under contract with anyone. And so rather than enter into a quick contract again and still not have our needs met, I asked instead for Thought Exchange to prepare a presentation for the board so that you could have another view.
Got it. All right, now you can resume.
Thank you.
Sir.
Wonderful. Yeah, James.
Mr. James, there you go.
Context is so valuable. So I'm really grateful for that, Superintendent. Thank you for sharing all of that. So again, I'll provide it. Yeah, absolutely. I'll do a quick kind of high level overview, and then I'll get us into the tool so that you can experience it for yourselves. And then we'll just take a look at what kind of data and analysis reporting the tool is going to generate for the leadership of the district, so that will help you understand your community, understand your staff, understand the perspectives of many, many people in a very efficient way. So at a high level, the basic idea of Thought Exchange is that it's a comprehensive engagement platform that is really designed to allow you to have collaborative conversations at scale. And what I mean by that is the core unique element of Thought Exchange is that rather than it be a one-to-one conversation, as you would typically have in a survey where you ask a question, often you're giving a set of options from which people can select, and that's the only experience that they're going to have in that participation of doing the survey. In a Thought Exchange, you're always deliberately starting with an open-ended question, and you're then inviting people to share their perspectives in their own words, to also then take time to consider and rate the perspectives of many other people who are also in the conversation. So you're deliberately trying to give them an opportunity to get out of their own head and to spend time considering diverse perspectives from other community members, from other teachers, from other employees, whatever the particular group of folks are that you're looking to hear from. And then lastly, as a participant, the tool is going to give folks an opportunity to view the results in real time. So there's a built-in high degree of transparency that is really intended to build confidence and trust in the fairness of the process, and to give people exposure to what is really resonating and what are the issues and perspectives that are where there's clearly consensus building in a large group of people. The way that we talk about this is collective intelligence. How do you facilitate conversations between people, large volumes of people, hundreds or thousands of people? How do you facilitate collaborative conversations where they can engage with a lot of different diverse perspective in a short amount of time, and through the opportunity to rate one another's thoughts, help reveal what are the issues and priorities that matter most? And likewise, what are the issues and priorities that perhaps don't have a lot of momentum or consensus within the group? So this is the core idea behind the tool. The way that, we work with close to 800 school districts across the country on issues ranging from, you're preparing a bond referendum and you really want to make sure that you're building a plan that reflects the needs and priorities and concerns of your community. And so Thought Exchange will help you generate the kind of in-depth insight that you need and the feedback that you need in order to put forth a proposal that you can be confident in. Or, if you're doing strategic planning, or you're launching the beginning of a school year and you need to hear from first year teachers about the specific things that they need in order to be set up for success. There's a whole range of almost limitless things, but I would synthesize it into any moment where the leadership is going to appreciate and be able to operate from a place of greater confidence and to make better and more informed decisions because they're able to tap into the perspectives of the many. Thought Exchange is the method that's going to allow you to do that. And it's going to allow you to do it without having to gather people together like you would necessarily if you were doing a town hall or a focus group. A couple of very important elements of how the tool works, one of which is that it's anonymous and very purposefully so. So we're trying to deliberately strip away the bias that can be infused into any conversation when personalities and dynamics and power dynamics are involved. And so in a thought exchange, there's no names attached. So when somebody contributes a perspective, it's completely anonymous. And when they're rating the perspectives of others, it's also anonymous. And the idea is to put the attention squarely on the content of ideas so that any person, irrespective of whether they have clout and influence or seniority in the community, has an opportunity to present an influential idea and to be heard in an equitable manner. The tool is also available in any language of choice. So if you have a diverse community of folks that you are serving in the district, and some people are going to be more comfortable expressing themselves in a language other than English, the tool is available for them to engage in whatever language of choice, and then those thoughts will be instantly translated for everyone else in whatever language they happen to be participating in at the same time. And then lastly, I'll just say that within the construct of this thought exchange that I've described, you can also include a whole host of different survey questions that will allow you to, whether it's about, what school do you attend, or, how do you identify within the district, a parent, a staff member, a community member, any question that is of interest to the district, you can include those. And then those survey questions will allow you to filter and disaggregate the open-ended data based on those different sections of people. So you can understand what are the things that are uniquely important to people at the elementary school level? How is that different from the high school level? So on and so forth. As the superintendent mentioned, in addition to what I've described, you can also run straight surveys. So there are times when it's necessary and important to just run a survey. You can also do that within our platform. So before I move on to the demo part and kind of get you into the tool, let me just pause and ask if anybody has any questions.
Sure. I'll start with committee members. Ms. Perez, do you have any questions?
My question would be from superintendent. Okay, what's the difference in pricing between this and?
Panorama?
Yeah, Panorama.
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember the cost of Panorama. Do you remember, Ms. Jenkins?
Ms. Jenkins will join us. Dr. Jenkins.
One school year, the cost was estimated at $65,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Trader.
That was one. So what's the difference?
For one school year, the quote that we received from Thought Exchange was for $50,000 for one option and $59,000 for the second option.
So it's cheaper.
Yes.
All right. Committee members, Mr. Benahan. I know you came in a little late, so
I'm not coming this morning.
Okay. Mr. Sokolovic.
Yeah, my question, as well as for the superintendent, did this go out to bid?
No, this did not go out to bid. This is simply trying to stop gap spending money on a tool that is very limited and only allows us to do one thing versus trying something different since the contract has already expired.
Right, but I don't believe that's one of the exceptions to the bidding process is to stop that. I mean, it's a $50,000 expenditure is, I believe it's supposed to go to purchasing. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Mr. Pires.
The Pirates.
Yeah, we can definitely put it up, get some other quotes. And if there's nothing that's comparable, then we can certainly follow purchasing requirement for purchase, but it'll have to meet all the criteria.
Right, because I'm sure, I mean, qualified purchases for like single source and all that. And I'm sure there's plenty of surveys throughout the country.
The timing issue, there's some factors into the qualified purchase that can be explained. They would have to meet that criteria.
And there is timing issue. We have surveys that we are required to deliver to our students, and we have a deadline to have those surveys delivered and gathered for our students for this quarter. And so rather than spending another $60,000+ on a tool that does not give us the type of data that we necessarily need, I wanted to try to present to you guys a tool that I think will present not only the type of data that we need for our students and well above what we gather for our students, but also serve in multiple different platforms that will help resolve the communication gap that we have in the district.
But doesn't Parent Square have the ability to do
So that's-
surveys?
That was my question.
That Parent Square does not have the capacity to do what Panorama does, and it does not have the capacity to do certainly what Thought Exchange can do. And it is not user-friendly to program Parent Square to do the piece for the survey. I consulted with Mr. Carafa prior to even reaching out to Thought Exchange.
Have you reached out to any other firms besides Thought Exchange?
I've used many. I've used K-12 Insight. I've used Thought Exchange. I've used a ton of different firms.
Have you reached out to any, my question was, have you reached out to any other firms other than Thought Exchange?
For the most comprehensive solution for the most reasonable price that we could get in the district.
I apologize again, that doesn't really clearly answer my question. Have you reached out to any other firm that provides comparable services for a price quote?
Asked and answered.
No, ma'am, it wasn't.
It's a yes or no question.
I said I could. I didn't say I have not. I reached out to Thought Exchange and I said why.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Pires, with that being said, does this qualify as one of those items that have to go to purchasing? Like so explain to the board because we have new members, what is the process for purchasing before even pursuing something like this?
The city ordinance requires any purchase over $25,000 to be placed out to bid for an RFP. If the item is deemed to be emergency, sole source, it's a lot of criteria. I'm not really familiar with all of them, but it can qualify for a qualified purchase. So we have to discuss and see what the circumstances are behind this product and what it offers that it might qualify for a qualified purchase. If it does, then that's a vehicle is not used to purchase it. If not, it'll go up to bid. We can get quotes for other companies.
So then who determines whether or not this is emergency? Is it the superintendent? Is it per cabinet? What makes the determination of where it falls in the things you just said?
The decision ultimately falls with purchase.
Okay. Yes.
We can submit the criteria we feel that qualifies and it's being eventually not. That's right.
And that should be before we put ink to paper.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Okay. Any further questions?
It doesn't say that we can't get two other quotes that's comparable to this product. And ultimately, this product might be the best product that serves our needs.
Okay. Any further questions?
Thank you. No, I would have some questions for the presenter, but we can move on to Ms. Cashmere.
Ms. Casimir?
No questions.
I don't think we have any online staff. My question is also, my question would have been to the superintendent, but you kind of answered it because we do have we do have the website Parent Square. So even if seeing like what was the difference, so you did answer that. My question now is to you, Mr. James, is how do you, because it's so open-ended with the responses, how do you flag any responses that may be inappropriate to a response of a parent or a student or whoever? How do you flag that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The software has a built-in moderation feature where essentially the machine is trained to analyze people's responses, and if there's any foul language identified, it will automatically pull those thoughts. If there is somebody who's called out by name, it can catch and pull out those thoughts. If somebody is entering, the same thought over and over again in a bid to try to influence, the conversation or to make their perspective seem more significant, the software will catch those things. And what it allows you to do is to assess for yourself, make a determination. Is this thought in fact inappropriate as it crossed a line? If it is, then you don't have to put it back into the conversation. However, you can also assess that as a human being and say, I think that this is perfectly fine. It may not be, pleasant. It may not be something that I agree with, but it's I'm not here to censor people, in which case a thought can go back into the conversation. But those are essentially moderation features that we have different levels that you can choose to turn on for different conversations. So if you're doing something that is involving all of your community and is around a contentious topic, then our team would be providing a little bit of advice to you on which features of moderation to turn on for that particular engagement.
Okay, before I go back to Mr. Benningham, I do have a question for Mr. Pires. If this specific, and this before Mr. James presents any further, if this is going to go through the purchasing process, should we not continue because it has to go through process with other candidates, or we can pursue further? I just want to make sure.
It doesn't hurt for you to know.
Okay, perfect. So now back to, thank you. Now back to Mr. Benningham, any questions?
No, you're almost asking the exact question. You just asked how much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. So then I want to just go back again, Mr. James, before I continue, is to let the record reflect Mr. Benningham is in person. I didn't say that. So now I'm going to ask board members any specific questions to Mr. James. Oh, wait, committee members first.
Yeah, actually, I have a question on the status. When did Panorama's contract expire?
During my transition.
So when is that? July, August?
It was beginning of August, end of July.
Hold on, she's coming.
She's sorry.
She's coming.
It's my understanding that the contract ended on June 30th, 2023. We had the opportunity to obtain data by September 29th, 2023, so we can get old archive data. But we do not have a contract with Panorama at this time.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Traver.
So you're saying that we could still get data that we had gotten before, but we can't initiate any new surveys for data.
Correct.
Thank
Do you have any questions for Mr. James?
you. No.
Okay. Miss, no questions, Mr. Sepulveda?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Can the surveys be anonymous?
Yeah, they are by design anonymous.
Okay, well, awesome. And it can be used on any platform. Like we currently use Parent Square.
Yeah, absolutely. In Thought Exchange, when you create an exchange or a survey and you want to then start to invite people to participate in that, it essentially is going to generate a link and a QR code, and then you can choose to push that out to any audience through any platform that is that you use, whatever your student information system is, however you want to reach people through your website, through your social media channels, in a live meeting, any of those things work.
And finally, how do you prevent duplicate answers?
Well, if somebody's doing duplicate answers, the software is going to catch that, and that's part of the moderation feature that I mentioned. So that's the first sort of safety feature there, to catch duplicate answers. The second thing that I would say to that is what makes a particular perspective significant or influential within a thought exchange is not just that it was said by a given individual, but more importantly, how it was then subsequently rated and interacted with by many other people in the conversation. And so in essence, if somebody says something and they're speaking for themselves, of course, if people don't feel strongly about that perspective, or they don't particularly agree with that perspective, they're likely to give that thought consistently a relatively low rating. And so how that impacts the way that the data are ultimately presented is that thought will not appear high up as one of the highest rated thoughts, because it has not been responded to in a way that demonstrates that people have a lot of consensus or alignment with that perspective. And the idea behind this is to help ensure that it's not just loud, dominant voices that are able to shape the narrative, but that instead it's really about a broader view of where consensus lies within a group. And that's part of why the anonymity feature is really important, because we know that, you know, we're all human beings and social dynamics are what they are, but a lot of the time conversations tend to be dominated by a smaller number of people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Casimir. Do you have any questions for Mr. James? I just have one more follow-up question. The question is, how do you get that data back to your vendor, your client, so us? So how will we receive that back? Is it in graph form? Is it in, what would it look like? Or do we have a choice to ask you what we're looking for in order to receive that data back?
You have access to everything. So essentially, Thought Exchange is a tool that the leadership of the district will access using their email address and a login through their browser. There's no other tech infrastructure. Essentially, they'll have an account that is gated just for the leadership, and they can access all of the data at any time for any of the exchanges or surveys within that dashboard. And I'll show you, if you are able to give me a little bit more time, I can show you what that dashboard and all the different data representations look like. You know, there's, for instance, it's going to categorize and theme all of your data for you. There's a open AI integration that's going to allow you to prompt the data and ask it questions so that you can help make more informed decisions more efficiently. It's going to show you areas of polarization that are occurring in the conversation. What are some of the issues and topics that are getting very divergent responses from different groups of people in your community? These are just some of the things that it's going to reflect back to you. And then there's reports that you can push out to your community. There's, you know, slide presentations that can be automatically generated that capture the essence of the key data from that particular exchange. So if you're having a conversation as a board, the superintendent could easily generate and present a slide deck that captures the key data from any particular engagement.
Okay. I know you said you wanted to do a demo. We have one other item that's coming up, but I don't know, how long do you think your demo will take?
If you have 10 minutes, if you have 10 minutes, I can do two things. If you have 5 minutes, I can do one thing.
Yeah, let's do 5 minutes. So just so we don't keep candidates longer than they need to be. So
Okay.
the floor, you can, yep, go right ahead.
Great. So here's what I'm going to do.
You need presenter rights.
Please.
Miss Rita. Give me 1 second.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Miss Rita.
Can you see my screen, folks?
Yes.
Yes.
You might want to minimize the meeting though.
Okay, thank you. That's a good tip. I'm going to be very quick. So
Okay.
here's an example of a thought exchange, okay? So the question here is, what knowledge, skills, competencies, experiences will our graduates need to be successful in learning, work, and life? This is essentially about building a portrait of a graduate. Here you have the option to select the language you want to participate in. You hit Get Started. Now there's a couple of survey questions. What group do you most closely associate with? Let's just say I'm a parent. So I answer that parent. Now it's going to give me a quick rundown of how the process works. In the interest of time, I'm going to just keep moving. The introduction is your opportunity to provide context. Why is it important for you to be hearing from people on this conversation? This is your chance to share whatever context is important. You can also choose to have a video here. So if the superintendent wants to speak directly to the community, there can be a video of her doing that here. You can upload a document. If you need somebody to review a draft safety plan for the district, you can have that document here and people can review it before they participate. Okay, I hit next. And now share thoughts. So if I want to, I've already shared some thoughts in this exchange. So if I say share more, here's my opportunity to share a thought. Okay, so I think that students need to be critical thinkers and know how to work in teams collaboratively. Okay, so I'm going to submit that thought. That's a thought that I want to share in this conversation. I can continue to share more thoughts, or I can rate the thoughts of others. So now a thought is being presented to me. This has been contributed by somebody else. They've said emotional intelligence. Skills can be learned. EIQ must be instilled at a young age and cultivated. If I disagree strongly, I give it 1 star. If I agree strongly, I give it 5. I like this thought, so I'm going to give it 5 stars. They need to be able to work collaboratively with others. I'll give that 4 stars. Enjoy what they do and get a good paying job. I'll give that 3 stars. They need to be a self-starter, a lifelong learner, so learning can continue lifelong. Great. So you get the idea here. You're interacting with people's thoughts. You're considering whether you agree with them, and you're rating those thoughts as an individual. And then you get an opportunity to view all thoughts. So this is, again, the transparency that is baked in. Okay, so now it's showing us that there's 194 thoughts in this exchange. Well, here's the number 1 rated thought. Our graduates need the knowledge of reading, writing, and mathematics. They will also need the skills and experiences of analyzing and researching to be competent in communicating, planning, implementing, and achieving goals, so on and so forth. Okay, so they need basic life skills like a checkbook, bill paying, rental agreements, credit scores, finance management, work ethic. So the open-ended nature of the question really allows people to say to you what they think is crucial, and then the rating allows the group to say these are the things that actually matter to a larger volume of people. So that, in essence, is participating in a thought exchange. And now what I'm going to show you here is an example of the kind of data dashboard that is generated. So every time you run a thought exchange, you'll have a dashboard that looks like this. This isn't an example of a district that was doing facilities planning. You can see that they had over 1,000 people who contributed 742 thoughts. This is the piece of data that I say is the most important and the most unique. Almost 34,000 ratings in this conversation. And those are the unique data points that are helping to substantiate which are the perspectives that really have a lot of consensus. The AI has taken all of this qualitative data and it has broken it down into a very short summary. The AI has also analyzed the words and the answers of all participants, and it's themed those thoughts into topics or categories. So we can see here that class size is a very popular theme. Here are all the verbatim thoughts of individuals that were contributed in relation to class size. And you can see that this one here, I support a new high school, but I want class sizes addressed first. 26 kindergartners was too many this year. I didn't feel my child was able to get the attention required. This was rated by 52 people. It was contributed by 1 individual, but a lot of people saw and rated that thought, and they had a high degree of consensus with that thought, and so they rated it highly. Here you can see, again, the elegance of asking an open-ended question. In some of the most highly rated thoughts, you have things as divergent as security, the importance of property values, sporting facilities and high school stadium, overcrowding at the elementary level. So these are things that are just coming up organically through asking the question, and then people are rating to help create some prioritization of those things. There's a word cloud to help give you a visual sense of what is resonating within the conversation. Again, what is really unique about how thought exchange works is that there's 2 ways to look at this data. One is what I'm showing you right here, which is a representation of the things that people mentioned most often when they answered the question. So a lot of people at the beginning answered by talking about the importance of building a new high school. But when you gave them an opportunity to consider the thoughts of others, the issue of a new high school has actually shrunk in significance, and things like classroom size have grown. And that's a reflection of the fact that class size was mentioned less frequently, but it was rated more highly. So people often didn't think of it. When they saw a thought about class size, they intuitively agreed. Okay. This is a new feature that is integrating AI, and the AI is essentially able to analyze all of the data within your exchange and create different categories. Okay, so here's a category about building a new high school, and then it provides an overview of what that category entails. K to 3 grades, the use of this particular J.F. Burns building, fiscal responsibility, transition impact, on and on and on. It's also going to give you talking points out of the data that has been analyzed. What are some talking points that the leadership team should consider integrating into the way that it takes its next steps in addressing the issues that people have shared with them? And then lastly, there's a feature here called Ask the Advisor. And what Ask the Advisor allows you to do is say, I want to prompt my data with a question. So I'm going to ask it to write an article that outlines what is important for participants who disagree with this facilities proposal. I'm asking it to outline their most important values, and I'm asking it what is important to share with those people if the school district is trying to win their support. So right now, the system is in real time analyzing the data that all of these thousands of people have contributed, and now it's come up with a report. So that's what you see here, okay? The proposal to build a new auditorium, introduce green technology, and initiate sustainability measures in the school district has been met with mixed reactions. Some participants are in favor, others have expressed concern and disagreement. This article aims to outline the most important values and concerns of those who disagree and provide information to gain their support. So what it does is it's analyzed all of these responses, and it's come up with 6 key things that are the values and concerns of those who disagree. And then it's also come up with a series of points here about ways that the district could address those concerns and hopefully gain support from the community. So these are some of the elements of how you can work with your data in real time to help guide decision making and hopefully save you time. There's also a whole host of different reports that you can generate from within this dashboard that allow you to share data back to your community, back to your stakeholders in different forms as well, just to make sure that there's a high degree of trust in the way that you're making your decisions. So I think I took more than 5 minutes, but
you did, but it's okay. Thank you, Mr. James, for joining us this evening. Mr. Traber has a quick question for you. Go ahead, Mr. Traber.
Mr. Haga, while that survey is going on, you're saying that the program is automatically translating into 50 or 60 languages that we need?
Yeah, essentially, yes. So as people are participating, they can choose to participate in whatever language, and it will be automatically translated. And that's happening through a Google Translate integration. So that translation services is being provided by Google. So if I'm Polish and I speak Polish, I can participate in Polish, and then you can immediately see my thought in English or in French or in Swahili, for that matter, whatever language you have selected in which to participate.
Any further questions? So because this item is on the agenda for approval, we're not going to be able to approve it tonight until we've gone through the necessary steps with purchasing, correct, Mr. Yes? Mr. Pyrus, I'm sorry, it's just late. Huh?
That's what you choose to.
So I'll leave it up for board members. What are your thoughts on, because it is on the item, on the agenda?
Could I please just say one small thing? And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to influence your decision on this, but for what it's worth, Thought Exchange is considered a sole source product. We have 5 patents that underpin the technology that we have, that it makes our product very unique in the marketplace. And we have documentation that rigorously outlines that technology and those patents and we very regularly go through a sole source purchasing process when districts are buying the tool. So that's just something for you to know, that that's a pathway that we often are asked to go down when people are buying the tool.
Thank you.
All right.
I'd like to share something else.
Sure. Dr. Levy? David?
I've worked in districts where we've had to work through very difficult, very controversial topics, very polarizing topics with the community. And we would not have been able to engage in two-way communication where we understood the value of the individuals responding, where we understood the barriers to what we were proposing, or what we were not able to provide and why the community was angry about it, without using a tool like thought exchange. Typically, when you have community forums, people don't all arrive at the same time. If they do, they don't all get to participate in the conversation, despite however long we may want to pass the mic around. And so it's very difficult to capture the real thoughts, real moment, live thoughts of the community that we are serving. And this is a feature that goes beyond just a survey. We can do a plain survey with Thought Exchange. It does that all day long and gives you all the quantitative data and charts that you need. But if you want to have an ability to actually forecast where your community is trending, where it's moving, what things they're valuing, what barriers are they're seeing, what things they're seeing as barriers in the community, how we can forestall things that are going to create stress in our community. You want a two-way tool where you can hold that conversation in a very safe, a way that you can actually control the content so that it's not offensive, so that people's identities are not being revealed, so that things aren't being done or said that are inappropriate or offensive to others. It provides you the capability to do that. I haven't found any other tool in the market, and I've been doing this for a very long time, that does this, which is why when they shared that Panorama had expired and we were going to have to either renew with them or go for another tool, when I looked at where we are with our 14 campuses that are in SIG, the commissioners network campuses that we have, basically over 18 schools that are circling the drain right now, we really need a real-time way to communicate with our parents. Each of you identified communication as one of the chief things that you want me to work on as superintendent. I need a tool that is going to enable me to do that. And I need that in real time. I arrived here and started on August 1st and hit the ground running. So there are a lot of things that I'm going to propose to you that I haven't had a chance to maybe do it in a way that is most comfortable with the board or completely complies with the way that policies have been written. But I would also challenge that, because our policies need to be able to meet the needs of the organization at any given time. If we write them so rigidly that we have to pass on a tool like this in a critical year, then we're not meeting the needs of our community. So I propose presenting this to you for approval, because we need a tool like Thought Exchange in a community like Bridgeport that is multilingual, that is multicultural, where we have a lot of very challenging topics happening at the same time in our community right now. And we want to be able to hear from our community how they're feeling, what we can do to support their trust in us, which we're working to rebuild, and how we can rebrand the way that our board is viewed in the public. And that is one of my chief priorities, not only coming in and being successful as a superintendent, but also how do I rebrand our school district, our schools for our neighboring suburbs, and our board for those same parents in the neighboring suburbs. So those are all things that we can talk about at length, but if we don't have a tool to really measure and hear from people, we can see each thought. We can see everything people write. We can be as granular or as broad as we want to be with this tool. And that is the power of the tool. So I wanted you to have a chance to vet it, to look at it. And this presentation doesn't even begin to touch the capacity of AI combined with the brilliance of the creator of this tool. So I want to encourage the board to take a moment take a beat, think on it. If you don't want to vote on it tonight, that's fine. But let's not pass up something that's good for Bridgeport simply because I may not have gotten 3 bids. I can have 3 bids by noon tomorrow.
So thank you for sharing. What I'm going to say in the interest of time, what I'm going to say in the interest of time, because we do have other candidates, I would propose to table this till we've had an opportunity to go through the purchasing process, but it's also ultimately up to the committee to do so. So, Mr. Sokolovic, is it a quick point? Because we're on time.
It's a quick point, a quick
Okay.
question. How, would be Mr. Turnaround. Mr. Pires, what would be the turnaround time to get this in as a qualified bid?
They meet every Wednesday, so I can have it in tomorrow, and hopefully there'll be a decision by Wednesday. I think you need to kind of take a look at the merit of the program and decide whether or not it's unique enough that we can use it, and then we can apply for the qualified purchase. And if it meets all of the criteria that's presented to the purchasing board, they'll approve it or they'll deny it. And I think that's the route we should take. But I think you need to come to a consensus as to
Correct.
what you want to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Traver.
I agree with you about the importance of having a proper program. I think we need to make sure that this is the one. I think we need to do what Mr. Pires says, and I think we move to table this. So I so move while Mr. Pires does that.
Is there a second?
So, Mike, can I just?
You have a question?
Well, if it's a sole source product, that means that there's no other program like this?
That would be the criteria that we would use for applying for the qualified.
They would look at it.
They will look through
And the justifications that we'll present to the purchasing board will be
that.
what they'll base their decision.
So there is a letter saying that this is a sole source product. They have to actually confirm it.
There's through the process, and all they're doing is verifying all of the things that have been presented. All right, so it's been, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second, the motion was to table it until it goes through the purchasing process.
And approve it pending the purchasing process. It's up to you.
It's up to the committee. You move to, do you want to?
I like that idea.
Okay.
Either way, we're not going to know by the next board meeting.
No, we won't.
But it'll pass the meeting, so it doesn't have to come back here.
Yes, okay, that's fine.
All right, so we need to make an amendment.
No, I withdraw my motion.
Okay, so who would like to make a new motion?
I would make a motion that we refer it to the full board pending approval by the purchasing committee.
Is there a second? Second, any further?
Purchasing board.
Yep, is there any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Pires will lean on you for updates on where he stands. What we'll do in the meantime, thank you so much, Mr. James, for joining us. You'll hear from our staff on the next steps, should things go well, so you'll hear from us.
Thank you for your time.
No problem, thank you. Thanks, James. All right. Let's go back to the agenda, and we're back to, that's all for the candidate. Okay? Yes? All right. All right, so at this moment, you can join us at the table. Dang, there's no more space. You can sit next to Mr. Traver. Or I can move. No, it's totally fine, yeah. Just. All right, at this moment, hi, Mr.
Saki.
Saki?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Saki, thank you for joining us this evening. We are the committee for this particular item. What will happen is each board member will give you a question. That question will stay consistent throughout the entire interview. And then you'll hear from HR on further steps. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take a vote on whether or not to go to an executive session And then you have the decision if you want to not go into executive session or do it in person. It's totally up to you. All right, is there a motion? Motion to go into executive session?
Second.
Any further questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? I abstain. Motion, we're all set. Okay. It's up to you. How would you like to do your interview?
Executive section.
Okay. All right, we're going to go into executive session. All members that are going to executive session are committee members, Ms. Perez, Ms. Brown, Mr. Tree. Oh, we have one. Oh,
You can see these are for the nutrition center.
oh, no. Miss Siegel sent me, Miss Rita sent me, a text that's gonna be tabled. So then what is that? Item 3. Yep, she sent me a text. Is she still on? Did she want to confirm? Miss Siegel, do you want to confirm that we're tabling this one? I know Miss Rita sent me a text. Okay, well, I'm just gonna go off what Miss Rita said, okay? All right, so our next item on the agenda is the last item, which is interview and discussion of the interim deputy superintendent. His resume is in our packet in page 55. Yes, and his name is Dr. Royce Avery. Yep, you can join us. Yep.
Favor just left.
Oh, yes. So just give us 1 second to give Mr. Trigger a chance to come in. You can have a seat, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We'll just do a quick. Okay. I miss, I know we're trying to save paper in the trees, but I kind of miss the paper. Just because
true.
this is so hard sometimes.
You know, I say that when we do elections, they throw away the orange paper and I see the big garbage can full
Wow.
of paper. Because when, a kid's need, it's a color. When it's color, it's more expensive. You know, I've been having.
Is it bad? Just punch bag. Just wonder if it's possible to separate the files in the packet.
That could, you know what it is? Yes, maybe different ones for the meeting, just each of them have different. Will probably help.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a lot of like switching back.
No, they're not. They're not. They are very expensive, yeah. It's a page 54.
50. Mm-hmm.
I had to go move my car. I was like, I think I was almost back to Bastic.
Where? Why?
Because there's no parking. I got here.
Oh, wow.
We went into like one of the rooms where it wasn't. It's like.
It's okay.
Huh?
It's not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just let you know.
Yes, can you do that? Yes. I mean. All right. Do I need it? All right, so this item is, I'll read back into it again. This item is interview and discussion of interim that we've done with all the rest of them. We're gonna ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, something that's not already within your resume, and then obviously there'll be questions from the board. The floor is yours.
Again, thank you guys for having me here. My name is Dr. Royce Avery. I am a retired school superintendent in the state of Texas. One of the things that I would like to kind of share with you is that I'm the baby of 13 children. And my family was raised with pretty much nothing. So we kind of like, education was one of those focal points for my mom to really kind of focus on making sure that all the kiddos had, a good base. Again, I was raised in a really small town in Texas, and really education was a really focal point for me as a young boy growing up. I had a chance to, again, really exceed in academics and in athletics. In high school, I was a 3-time state champion in the 400-meter dash. So I ran around that track one time, and it kind of, reaped the reward for me because I was able to kind of get a full track scholarship to run at a very prestigious college in Texas, Rice University in Houston. Again, really kind of molded me to be who I am today. Again, I had a degree in sports medicine, so I didn't really get into education until after I got out of college with my bachelor's. Again, the education was really a forefront for me because I taught reading and math to underprivileged children while my 4 years in college, came home for the summer and was able to teach math and reading to underprivileged children. So it really kind of molded me to be an educator, a strong set. So as I graduated, I went to work for a physical therapy as a physical therapy assistant, and I really hated it. It was one of those things where I was working with, the people that had injuries and they didn't really want to continue doing what they need to do. So I opted to go to what they call alternative certification. And so that gave me an opportunity to go back and get my teaching degree in special education. And so as my career, unfolded, my focus was in special education as a teacher. I taught for 7 years as a special education teacher, and then went into administration, assistant principal. I went back to my home school, hometown school, as high school principal. And from that point, my career kind of catapulted from there. And so from high school principal to executive director for secondary schools in a large urban school district. From that point, I got my first superintendent tendency. And then from there, several other superintendencies. And then in 2020, I decided to retire as a school superintendent because there's a lot of different things going on in my life to where I needed to be able to kind of take a break. After 28 years in the business, I decided to kind of retire. So the last 3 years, I've had an opportunity to do some consulting work, but also the last 2 years, I worked as a client executive for a large technology company in Texas, where I was able to kind of sell technology, security, solutions to school districts across the state. And so that's kind of just a snapshot of everything that's happened over the last couple of years as well.
All right. Thank you so much. So this board committee members will be able to ask you a question and kind of be on the same consensus of everyone. I will say that if there are questions for the superintendent, that we hold off and just make sure that we have these questions here so that we can get through his interview process, and then any further questions we can have for you.
Absolutely.
All right. So we'll start with committee members. Mr. Traver.
Are we doing the standard questions or are we just having those questions?
Standard questions. Yeah.
We're not doing an interview for a position.
No, this is an interview for interim deputy superintendent.
Then I would ask, I would pass right now.
Excuse me. I guess so, yes, because we've been in.
No, you can ask any question you want. This is a different position.
But
So you could ask any question you want. You only have to ask the same question if it's multiple people in the same position.
There you go. All right. I just asked the same question I asked everybody else. What would be one of your top priorities for this district?
I think really, as an interim deputy superintendent, I think the the focal point for me is to support the superintendent in some of the initiatives and also the board as to how, you're setting forth to improve the district. So my job is to be able to kind of have a supplemental role to support and be able to provide guidance to, again, with a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. I've done a lot of different things throughout my career. I think I will be able to kind of support the superintendent in her goals and her vision, and then being able to kind of get those things, solidified before being brought to the board, or when the board has issues with some of the things that happen in the district. I will be able to kind of support that and give them suggestions and ideas of how that has been done in the past, and being able to support those initiatives as well.
Thank you. All right, I'll open up for committee, regular board members. Mr. Bellingham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for I appreciate that. And I have a question for you. We have 19,264 students and around 35 magnificent staff, around 30,000 parents, an amazing community. What are you going to do if you've been elected from the board to work in medical to have successful Bridgeport Public School?
I think it's important to understand that whole perspective and that vision that the board has, and understanding, the needs of this community in this district. I served in a district with 60,000 students as an area superintendent, where I was in charge of, a third of that district. And it has a lot of similarities to this current district as well. So I think being able to help and navigate, those perspectives, I think it's important to look at where Bridgeport is and where Bridgeport is wanting to go. And I think as an interim guy, being able to kind of set the stage and set the formation of this position for the person coming in is something I think the superintendent is really needing. And then using my expertise as a previous superintendent, I think I can be able to help mold and guide those things and those initiatives and those perspectives. Again, it's every district is unique. Being able to understand the uniqueness of Bridgeport, and I've had some similar opportunities to kind of engage, and I think I'm going to be able to really kind of bring some light to some things that I've used and done before, and helping again setting the stage for the next the real deputy superintendent coming in. I'm going to be able to help at least flesh out some of those things and be able to kind of be supportive in that way as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bear.
Mr. Sokolovic.
Yes, Dr. Avery. You're currently residing in Texas with very different school, correct? And very different school district, very different dynamics. And the interim superintendent position is likely to last only probably 9 months until the permanent position is filled. Do you think you could get on board and learn enough about Bridgeport and Connecticut school systems to be effective?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I say that because, the job is pretty, similar in every different state when it comes to the support of the superintendent. So again, being able to understand those things, understand how Bridgeport works, and kids are kids. I think kids are pretty similar across every superintendent, every district perspective. And so I think it's important, they need to feel loved and supported. Teachers the same way. They need to be supported, being able to provide those additional resources for them, and being able to kind of work through all of those types of things. And with a new superintendent, I think, she is also in need of someone that's going to be able to kind of, hit the ground running, to be able to support, teachers, kids, staff, whatever. And I think I will be able to do that. I think that's important for me to be able to do. I'm a people person. I enjoy doing and working and making sure that we can build from the bottom up. And I've had pretty good success with that across, my tenure as a school superintendent. And again, that's the hot seat. And, my job is to support, her in her new role. And you know, you guys know as well as I do, with a new superintendent, there's so much involved with that. You know, from the political side to the community side to the teacher side to the student side to the parent side. You know, and I just feel I have the ability to help support her in that venture. So again, I think it's when you look at, you know, school districts, you know, across the nation, there's a lot of similarities. You know, same issues, you know, same political problems, same, you know, teacher shortage issues, budgetary issues. It's the same thing, you know, and I think you have a very talented, you know, superintendent, you know, before you. She has to be able to kind of understand, you know, the Bridgeport herself, learning those ins and outs of how this community is really needing that support. And again, I think my job is to help her do that in a very short period of time. You know, so yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Casimir?
Yes, this is not an easy job, especially in a district this size. What does self-care look like to you?
You know, taking care of myself and taking care of people around you is important. And growing up and understanding and working through my career, you know, I do have a family as well, being able to kind of take care of them as well. So there's a lot of integral pieces that has to come to play here. And again, taking care of, you know, the people, you know, closest to you is important. And that's kind of where I've driven my career over the last 28 years, is being able to do that. And that's a hard job too in itself, you know. So self-care, being able to help myself and making sure that, you know, you take care of your own first, and then you kind of work through getting everybody else taken care of, including, you know, that little kid across the district there, and making sure that person is involved in getting their needs met as well. So again, I think it's a variety of different things. You know, I'm a very spiritual kind of guy. So, you know, God is important to me to make sure that I take care of, you know, everybody involved in this whole process. So I think it's important that, you know, self is important. And sometimes people don't take care of themselves, and it hinders everything else that they do, you know, so.
All right, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. What about you? How do you take care of you? It's important to take care of other people. I get it. But what do you do for self-care for you?
I'm an average runner. I mean, again, I think it's important for me to kind of, you know, exercise and do, and I'm a reader as well. So I do a lot of reading to kind of reflect on some of the things that's important. And so it's you know, and sometimes you're so selfish in the role that you're doing, but you're not taking care of yourself. And so it's important that aspect of it as well, because, you know, I'll be here and my family will be, you know, back in Texas. You know, how do we do that? And so you have to take a break sometime, you know, and connect with family and making sure that we do those things that's important to us. So, absolutely wonderful question, and I appreciate you putting that out there for me as well, because I know I was in it, and so I was in it to win it, and so it's important that you have to step back a little bit for yourself. So and I've had a lot of different things to be able to do that with as well.
Thank you.
And I'm a fisherman too, so it doesn't lot of water. So that's important too as well.
All right, Mr. Traber?
I guess I want you to elaborate a little more on, as I see in the resume, you worked as Austin and, I'm sorry.
El Paso.
What was it? The IS, the second one was there it is. The school districts that you were superintendent. You said you worked at several school districts, and I was trying to go back through them. And so if you could elaborate a little about what the similarities were with Bridgeport, and then why you retired after 28 years, because that seems a little early to retire to me, so.
No, I mean, it was, you know, when you talk about, you know, the role of a superintendent and the majority of the things that you have done, you know, as a superintendent, you know, it was when I retired, it was right at the heart of the pandemic. And there's a lot of different things there. I lost a few close family members during that time as well. And so, it was, a couple of months prior to that, there was a board change in my current board that, in Manor ISD. And so the dynamics of things changed. And so it was important for me to kind of, you talk about that self-care and self-help. So you have to be able to step back and say, okay, in Texas, at the age of, at the rule of 80, you as a school educator, you can retire. And so it was my age and my years experience hit the age of 80 at that time. So I'm like, you know what? It's time for me to kind of reevaluate my life and reevaluate the importance of my family and what I needed to do. And so that's what I did. And I knew there was a time for me to, once I kind of reevaluated things, I could get back into the groove of things and do some other things. So when I retired, I opened a consulting business, an LLC for me to be able to do some consulting. And I did a little bit of that. I didn't do a lot. I did a little bit of that, and then I was approached to say, hey, you want to still work with school districts? And I worked for inside public sector, and it was a technology company, a large technology company, that's very global. And I could still do a little bit of engaging with school superintendents about the technology, security, safety issues that still had me, impacting kids. So I'm like, okay, I can do that, And then I was approached about, doing an interim opportunity here in Bridgeport. I'm like, you know what? I may do that. I think I have a lot. I still have a lot to offer. When I talked to Dr. Debbie David, she was like, hey, I'm going into a new district, and I've always been a mentor. So I train principals in leadership, building. I train teachers to become principals at Texas Tech and Texas Christian. So I've always had that itch of being able to support, these individuals wanting to enhance their positions in their position within school districts. And so I was like, I think this, and I know Bridgeport, I've read a lot about, the politics and the things, and, I've looked at the scores, the data, and there is so much potential. If you get the necessary, right ingredients, and I think your superintendent is brilliantly designed to do the work. And my job as an interim is to build the position as deputy superintendent, and getting her someone in here that can support her in what. And so she has to figure out what she needs, and since I've been in the role already, I kind of understand her needs. I kind of understand the dynamics of this district. And I think I can add value to what she has to offer. And again, looking for the person to take the full position, and being able to help her understand what this position needs as the interim is going to be important as she carries the torch for future years in this district as a school superintendent. I can do that without a problem, and I will be honored to do that. To help her in her role. Policy, procedures, all those things I understand and I've done before in small districts, medium-sized and large districts. And so I have some things I can add value to her as she brings things to the board. I have no problem being able to help support doing that. So again, I think that's, that's something that I can do for her and for this district, and would be honored to do that.
Can you explain the 80 thing to me?
The what? The age rule, it's your age and the number of years that you have in education. So together, once you hit the age of 80 in Texas, you're able to retire. And so I hit the age of 80. The rule of 80. The rule of 80. They're like, wait a minute.
Adding up that you added up there. 28 and 50.
I love it. No, that's
28 and
good question.
59 years old.
Yeah, so, and I mean, I looked that over, but I'm 57, I'm 57 years old. So I'm way past that little age,
Yeah, I
you
got
know, so, I love it. And you're welcome.
All right, so my question is, you mentioned some of the areas in which you plan to support the superintendent. So can you give an example of a core area in which you would help her either advance in or advance the board in any way? How?
Absolutely. I think, and I've had a long, opportunity to kind of chew on this part of it, but I've done tremendous work on instructional capacity building, academics. My last district was a DF rated district, and in 3 years, we became a B-rated district academically. So I think it's important for me to provide added value on the instructional side. I do a great job of supporting principals. As a school superintendent, my job when I first got into the district was to supervise principals because that's what the board wanted me to be able to do. And I think in the interim deputy role, I will be helping supporting principals in that capacity. I love instruction. Again, I started my career in education as I taught reading and math. My focus is in special education. I've done a lot of work. I worked at the state agency when I was at the University of Texas as the superintendent fellow, at the University of Texas at the corporate superintendency program. So special ed is very important to me. I have a daughter that is hard of hearing and deaf. She wears hearing aids, and she does sign language as well. So special education and advocating for those parents, because sometimes those parents can't advocate for themselves. And so for me, special education has been a very instrumental part for me because I was one of those dads that had to advocate for their daughter. And she's a senior this year. She's graduating, and she is ranked number 7 in her class at about 157 students. And I've helped her to advocate and be able to do the things that she needs to do as a deaf student. And to me, that's important. And so, again, on the academic side, I think it's important when I looked at your data, there's a lot of issues there on the academic side. And I think I can help understand the data and being able to kind of put things in place to kind of support that. It's just one of the things that I've done over the years I enjoy doing, and that's working with principals to build the academic capacity within their buildings, and because they have to own that. And my job is to support and help them own that.
Right. Well, this concludes the question part of our interview. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to meet with us, come here. I mean, I know coming from Texas and here is probably warmer there. It's getting on the.
No, the weather is awesome, y'all. It's been like 103 in Texas. So it's like, this is great.
You picked the pictures.
I don't know about the winter part of it. But I look forward to the opportunity to support as much as I possibly can. And I love the diversity. I think there's so much more that this community can give. And that's what I do. I love to be able to support that.
All right, so we're gonna actually have conversation with the superintendent, the discussion part of it. So you're more than welcome. We'll, if anything, you will hear from superintendent or HR if anything moves forward.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
All right, so this is the other part of it. If board members had any questions for the superintendent concerning this, please do share those questions. If there are none, then we can adjourn, but I just want to get the opportunity.
Well, I guess we had questions about whether this is proper hiring process for an interim position. So I don't know how we have this discussion.
Ms. Dixon?
I didn't get a question.
You want to come?
Can you join us then? Because no point in my shouting 2 different directions. An interim position. Why is this proper hiring process for an interim position? Why isn't it following the normal process of all the rest?
I think he was presented to you, this is not an interim principal, this is not an interim AP. He's going to be acting as interim deputy superintendent. And this is a hiring position, so this was a chance for the board to come meet him, ask questions, so you can familiarize yourself with the person who is going to be Dr. Levy David's right hand until we can find a permanent deputy superintendent.
So the question I'm asking is, why isn't it following the same procedure as every other position we're hiring?
Because you're not hiring him. This is not, he is interim, he's being appointed as an interim
Under
position.
for hiring an interim.
Correct, there is no.
There's a policy for hiring positions, period. There's no exception for interims. That's why I'm asking.
Again, there is, he followed, if you wanted.
When we hired, I guess I wasn't around for this, so I don't. When we hired an interim superintendent, we went through a very formal process. When we hired, there was another interim position.
This one, the same one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this one.
This
It's this one.
So with the,
Oh.
Was,
Well, I don't know, I don't think it was like Dr. Baldwin, but it might have been. Was she interim before him?
No.
it was interim and then they made decision to put it.
Dr. Baldwin was never, she was not interim. Yeah, no. Hiring process.
Okay, I didn't know about Dr. Baldwin.
Right.
I thought there was another interim we had before before Ms. Farrell. But they were all hired through
I
a
think-
formal process.
Superintendent Testani was interim.
Right.
for a period of time.
And so he went through a process. And so I guess I'm wondering why we're not doing that with this. So I guess that's really the question I'm asking.
I think
Why we're just sort of skipping that this time.
we are in the process of looking for the permanent
I
deputy
understand.
superintendent. Okay.
We were in
I'm
those
answering
times
your-
too.
Right, so I'm explaining the reasoning behind this. So while we're looking for the deputy superintendent, it is going to take time. We have CES that they are doing, they will start the search. Superintendent Levy David felt it was important at this point to bring in an interim deputy superintendent. And she is familiar with Dr. Avery. And she contacted him, and at this point, it would be, we did not post, there was no formal process or anything, we recognizing that he was gonna be interim. There is no, I don't think I can give you an explanation adequate for you to explain why there wasn't a formal process, other than this was something that the superintendent decided would best serve her and the district at this time, is to have someone step in and act as interim while we continue to do the search. Someone who can help, who with the experience can, again, hit the ground running and help us if and when we do find the permanent deputy superintendent. In addition, recognizing that we are in the process of hiring an assistant superintendent. Again, I'm recognizing some Dr. Avery's experience will help us in the long run with both the deputy and the assistant.
And I guess I'm not disagreeing with any of that. I understand all of that, but there is nothing that I see that says that we are able to do that. And I see nothing in the past that we've been able to do that. And I see nothing in the policies and procedures that we're able to do that.
And there's nothing in the
How do you justify doing that?
because there's nothing in the policy says you can't do it. There is nothing, the interim has always been, because an interim,
Hired an interim superintendent.
but again, the
Very
superintendent,
clearly followed a very formal process.
okay, but the superintendent is, the Board of Education has the authority to appoint the superintendent. Superintendent has the authority to appoint things below her, superintendent and below. So she is not hiring a permanent person. If she had just appointed Dr. Avery as a permanent superintendent without following doing the interviews, then we would be having a different conversation. And but because he's interim, he's not permanent, it would just be like, for example, Miss Lynn Stevens. She was appointed as the interim director of adult education. There were no interviews or anything, but she acted in that position for the last almost 2 months or so because we needed someone to fill in that position. And in the past, we've had interim positions until we filled them. But again, because the superintendent of Bridgeport Public Schools, you as the board, that is within your full authority to decide and vote for who will be the superintendent. Superintendent has the authority to appoint from deputy, assistant, and below. If it was permanent, then we have to follow a more formal procedure. Because it was interim, she does not have to follow any formal procedure because he's not permanent.
All right, Ms. Perez, questions?
I guess the only question I have is, so the search agency will be, like for the permanent role, is the anticipated start date for that? Would that be next year or is it as soon as possible?
As soon as possible. We've already worked with them. We have everything ready. We are just doing the finer details of the job description, and we have to decide on a date of how long we want it to post. If we leave it open for a longer period of time, then we run the greater chance of getting more possible candidates. So because this is something, again, as we did with the superintendent, it's more of a national search. We want to make sure we give it enough time to get interest and have a more viable pool of candidates.
So the interim role could be anywhere from like 3 months to the school year, or I'm just trying to think of a timeline for the interim.
Yes, it is possible.
Okay.
I don't think the process will be done this semester.
Okay.
I think a more reasonable expectation for a permanent deputy superintendent, would be more in line of early 2024.
Okay.
Mr. Benningham.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Dixon, to go clear to the point, I'm a kind of person who likes to go, not to go around. Is it necessary to be intern first and then decide to be having a permanent? Or why we don't go exactly the big interview and let's see, Dr. Lewis David say, he's the person, he qualified, he got all the what we need, what we're looking for, so go straight. Why do you have to be an intern and then the process? That's that's the point, because go over here, then go over there, then go to another step. It's not gonna take me forever. Much better, the way I prefer. If he's the qualified, he's the person, he's a good one for visual school, why we have to go all this process?
Because he's only interim.
Okay.
There's no indication that he has any desire to become permanent. As he indicated, he's from Texas, his family's still in Texas. I think because, and I'm sorry, I'm going to speak for you, Dr. Levy David is familiar with his success, his work ethics and his abilities. She tapped him to say, can you help us on the interim basis while we look for a permanent? Maybe he'll change his mind, like, wow, this is great, Bridgeport, let me apply for the permanent. We don't have anything saying he cannot apply for the permanent position, but our needs are being met by having someone now who can hit the ground running as interim until we can find the person that will become permanent.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Sepulveda?
Yes, so this is the only person who's got, I'm sorry, because I'm thinking, you did mention you were going to look for a retired superintendent, and I made the assumption that it would be drawn from the pool that we have at CAPS superintendents, because we have a lot of superintendents from Connecticut. Would it be more useful to have a superintendent from Connecticut with prior experience that knows the district, that doesn't have a learning curve to implement, especially since many of the top level candidates are starting to disappear? And you basically stated at the last meeting that there's a struggle because nobody was here to pass things along to you. So I think it would probably be best to even consider.
Can I answer? Yeah, are you finished?
Yes.
Dr. Levy, one of the challenges, Mr. Scola, with recruiting individuals, whether they're retired or currently still in the running, looking for a position is, and especially here in Connecticut, because I've had a chance to meet with, I'm part of several associations in Connecticut now, is that they don't want to come here. They feel that this is a very difficult market, very difficult board, very difficult community, and that there are a lot of things that make working at the cabinet level unsavory to them at this time in their career. And they've been very frank in sharing that with me. And for me, especially being that I'm in my first 100 days, it's critically important to have the right people at the table to do the work that has to be done very quickly. The transformation of a district such as Bridgeport is something that will take several years, but it's not something that I can sit on for 100 days while I meet and greet. The work still has to get done, and I need competent people who want to work with our kids, who have the experience in working in a multicultural setting, and who are eager and excited at the prospect of immersing themselves in everything that this district has that needs work. And I mean, I have a huge network. I called several people, and for whatever reason, either the timing didn't work, or this just wasn't their cup of tea. It's too cold. Connecticut is not everybody's cup of tea. So finding candidates is not as simple as posting and having the right people show up.
Right.
There has to be a desire to be here.
Right, absolutely, and I agree. Last September, we've embarked on a similar search for the superintendent, and I think we had 4 or 5 retired superintendents from CAPS apply to this broken district, and since that time, we've improved as a board significantly. Significantly, we've improved in the board, so we're in a better position. So this is not even send a letter to CAP. You send a letter to CAP. Send candidates. I mean, since we didn't even do it, we can't even gauge that. We're just going basically on your opinion of people who see newspaper articles. But we did have multiple applicants from CAPS before, of Connecticut retired superintendents. So, and Ms. Dixon, do you recall how many we had from CAPS before we whittled it down?
I don't remember. I was not involved in the process, the initial process. For the interim superintendent, I only came in when it was presented, when the board was ready to interview the final candidates. So I do know that I believe there were 2 retired superintendents from the state of Connecticut. There were 3 internal candidates that I could call off the top of my head.
And we didn't even look internally to see if anybody wanted to step up on an interim basis.
Are you asking me?
Yes.
If I felt that we had the capacity internally to fill it for the deputy superintendent position, I would have done so. We have a lot of work to do in Bridgeport. There's a lot of work to do in this district to build capacity. There's been a lot of transition, a lot of change, a lot of turnover. And that is severely, we have shrunken our C&I department to 1 person with a few clerks. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to build the capacity of our teachers. We don't have coaches. We don't have interventions. We don't have paraprofessionals for kinder. That we have decimated integral structural parts of an organization designed for learning, teaching and learning. And as a result of that, we've also decimated the capacity of our teams.
Just one last follow-up question. I just want this clear. When you say we don't have capacity, you're not saying there's nobody in the district that has the capacity to step up into the interim deputy superintendent position?
What I said is that at this time, I have not identified anybody in the district that has the capacity to fulfill the needs of a deputy that I need to do the work that has to be done in Bridgeport that you've hired me to do.
Thank you.
Ms. Casimir, any questions?
No.
The question that I have is, I definitely think he's a great candidate. I would suggest, and this may be at the board level, that we as a board internally need to look at policies and procedures when it comes to this particular thing, because it needs to make sense. We got to make it make sense as to how we outline any hiring process, as to why, bringing him before the community and bringing him before the board was so vital, because there's always that, who is working and where did they come from, and so on and so forth. So that is an item in our board level that we need to look at for policy, to make sure that going forward, it's clear as to what we are going to do when it comes to hiring anybody, and that it is the same across the board. So that HR as well as the board are on the same understanding, as well as the superintendent. My other concern is kind of like back to what Ms. Perez asked was, I understand that the timeline, and we went through the interim timeline. It was very, we had to make decisions and move forward. But my thing is, we're going to go out for the search firm to be able to, what is the search firm? CS. Yes?
CES.
CS to do the search firm. To do the search for the candidate. Is that financially compatible to what we're about to do when we hire an interim deputy? Like, what is the compatibility with the numbers? Because if we're putting together him for 9 months, 6 to 9 months, what does that look like for the search for CS? Financially, that's a misleading question.
I'm not sure, so CES has their fee for what they're charging us to do the search and everything. It's a flat fee.
Okay.
And
I think
right, 3,500, yes.
3,500?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not, okay, all right. So I was like, I feel like that question was asked about.
That was purported in.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right, so then I'm done now. The question is answered. I wasn't sure what the line was. Are there any further questions? Mr. Trieber?
I have no question. This is not on this. This is a more general question. I'm curious. I understand the procedure. I understand you answered my questions about the policies. Why do we interview one candidate for so many positions?
Right.
I understand the way this process is supposed to work. We're supposed to interview 2 or more candidates and then make recommendations to her, and then she decides. We don't tell her, we recommend, we give her our opinions, and then she decides. So we sat here tonight for hours interviewing people that there's no choice. So why did we do this tonight?
Because when, during the interview process, when we sat down, when the committee sat down and they talked about the candidates, most of these positions had one candidate that far surpassed the other candidates. Some of the schools, for example, like specifically thinking about the AP positions, the administrators and the committees felt it would be a waste of time to present the other candidates because of the difference between the scorings. Right, the difference between the scorings of the top candidates. Where, let's take, for example, Mr. Khan is, so, it just didn't make sense to present more than one candidate. They were not, second place, not even close.
Yeah, can I help with this? I think, Mr. Schreiber, that the underlying issue is the quality of the applicants that we're getting for these positions. We can have 20 applicants, and of those 20 applicants, maybe only one is someone that we would actually consider as a leader in our district. And those things are very glaringly obvious when you're leading an interview. And this is not the hiring season right now. this is not the time when people are moving to other districts. And so the pool of candidates was very shallow.
So what I am getting at with this question, I did read your explanation in writing and was struck by the gap in this policy that we need to, in our policies, refer this matter at our next board meeting to that committee to address the need for an exception. Because there's just, this was a waste of time to.
Not necessarily. I mean,
with just in terms of, I mean, I certainly don't mind meeting these people and hearing from these people, but it was a formality. It was a formality to ask them these questions because the committee had already decided these were the people that were going to be hired. And our interviewing them had nothing to do with whether that final decision is going to be made. And I can understand exactly what you're saying to me about the dearth of qualified candidates at this time of year in the pool of applicants. There may be other reasons at other times. And so we just, I think, need to explore if there's a way for us to avoid this. That's all. That's all I'm raising. And so I want to refer it to committee at the next general board meeting to explore whether the policy should have an exception when appropriate, like this, when a circumstance arises in the future like this. That's all.
But also I want to, if I could just add, when you look at the candidates that were presented today, keep in mind that 4 of them were internal candidates. So when we have internal candidates, a lot of times when they're so strong and solid, then it does, that it does give them an edge, a far greater edge, right?
I get it.
For the assistant principal position, we weeded out, we started with approximately 40 internal candidates alone and 2 external candidates. And we went through that and we had multiple interview groups, committees, and then we brought them smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we just kept going back to that original pool. We now we're down to about top 10 candidates.
I do understand what you're saying. And I can give you the converse of this, which is I am assuming, and I understand what that can mean, but I am assuming from the union's point of view, that they're not grieving it, so that means you must be right. You see what I'm saying? From our point of view, from the union's point of view, if they thought there were other candidates from the inside who were applying and were qualified, then they would be challenging that statement. And so since I assume they're not, then you must be right. You see what? Conversely, their actions are supporting what you're saying. That you clearly had established that. If they felt there were other qualified candidates who deserved to be heard, they would be challenging that statement. If they're not challenging that statement, then that must be an accurate statement you're making.
But in your policy states that internal
you have to
candidates
provide
are qualified
to show that those candidates, there was that head and shoulder difference. And so, yeah.
Okay. Well,
I just got some questions that are perking up now. For Mr. Traver's question.
Perking up this late.
Yes. Okay, now we say all qualified candidates must receive an interview.
Internal candidates.
Oh, that's right, correct. So must receive an internal interview. And certified staff, administrative, highest scoring. 3 will be interviewed by the personnel committee. So if there was more than 1, whether they're qualified or not, whether they're partially passed or not, they would have to come before the committee. It's not, there's no exception for a wide disparity in that portion. And principals, at least 2, sent to the school governance council, the personnel committee interviews and sends the school governance council to the regular. So they went to the school governance councils, all the principals and interviewees as well.
APs that we did the APs.
Let me just scroll down.
We streamlined, yes, we had staff and if there were any PAC or the council members governance members available, yes.
Okay, so this brings me to the policy of assistant principals. Letter G. At least two, based on the school committee recommendation, the council will then be interviewed by the BBOE personnel committee. So if we had 40 applicants and there was two, it says two, plain as day in the candidates. So if we had any internal candidates that were bypassed, I mean, because I believe the reason is two, so the board could have a choice to recommend or not recommend from two different candidates. Are you familiar with that portion where two have to come up?
I'm familiar with it, but the
Some of them
committee's
have
only recommended one. They put one, they discussed it and they felt one candidate was worth their votes to be put forward.
Right, but so the second highest scoring candidate on the rubric was basically cheated of his or her right to be interviewed for assistant principal.
No, they were interviewed for assistant principal.
By the board. It says by the client.
I'm not aware what the policy says, but at the same time, when the committees met and they are, I explained to them the process of things. The committee, which at that point consisted of members of staff and the parents, the councils and everything, they recommended one candidate each school to be presented to the personnel committee.
But that's not what the policy says. The policy says the top two scoring people will be forwarded to the personnel committee to be interviewed. Not, oh, we just don't feel like doing that. We feel like our idea is better. Policies are there for a reason. I've repeatedly asked.
And you had the top two candidates.
If there's a policy that is problematic, bring it to the policy committee and we change it. We just don't ignore policy.
I agree with that. You had two candidates for AP ultimately. However, it just turned out that Reed preferred one, Dunbar preferred the other. That's why it was presented like that. That is what, if you had recommended both of them, they would have ended up at what they were listed at that. The problem is that when you have the candidates before the committee, and when they all sit down and discuss things, when they think about who's going to lead their school, the school they work in, they teach in, or the school at which their child attends, they have strong opinions.
Absolutely.
And they recommended these candidates alone. We did go through multiple process for AP. AP is one of the most popular because it is the entry-level administrative position. We went through multiple rounds because we had multiple positions as well across the board. And we eventually ended up with approximately 10 top candidates. And then from there, then for each position, we would go back. And then when another AP position opened up, we went back to those original candidates, top candidates, and presented them to the schools. So we did start with a large group, but unfortunately.
You have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say this and then, so we're not here all night with this. The matter is, and this is, and I did speak to Ms. Dixon when this initially was brought to us, like, why isn't there two? And that was your response. I think that it just makes sense for committee-wise that it is two or more, because it doesn't feel fair. And this is what we've said amongst committee, that we're literally just interviewing that one candidate and have nothing to really reference anything to the superintendent. When we did the last one, I think there was maybe one candidate. Glasgow State, maybe one, but we had enough that we can say, Dr. Levy, here's what our thoughts are on this person versus this person. And we feel important and a part of the process.
I agree.
I'm not even gonna lie, these candidates were amazing tonight, but there was nothing to compare them to. to be able to give her our thoughts on what decision she should make. I mean, you know, just give her our thoughts. And I don't think that happened tonight. And we've had that conversation, just you and I, but even just as a committee level, that was not what we felt here as a committee tonight. And even leading up to it, because the process had already been done, so there's nothing else we could have done but come here and engage in conversation with them. So if it is, I honestly think, and maybe this goes back to governance, is it not clear enough? If it's not clear enough, then we need to make it clear enough on what the expectation is for this process. And I'm not saying that it's not but to me, when I read it, I'm like, okay, well, why don't we have this? But at the time, it's too late. So if there is that issue, we need to discuss it and clarify that so we don't come back here tonight. Not saying we wasted their time, because the gentleman came all the way from New York or wherever he was coming from. So you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think it's.
Yeah, he was one of two.
One of two. So.
He was one of two.
But I'm just saying, just in the future, if this is a policy thing.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something you just said.
Got it.
When you ask, let's say we had Reed and Dunbar tonight.
Mm-hmm.
There is an interview committee for Dunbar. There's an interview committee for Reed, right?
They were done together
Why?
because time was of the essence in that we needed to get these positions filled.
So the committee for Dunbar and the committee for Reed sat in the same room and interviewed the same people?
Yes, and then they talked amongst themselves, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we need to go back to governance and talk about how that gets handled. Because that's really the nut of the matter, is they're all being pulled together, and the schools have separate identities, as do the individual applicants. And there needs to be some, and we got to think about how that works. And we need to hear from, frankly, BCAS to see how they feel about it too, and how it's working for them. So that's really governance.
So before I go to Mr. Benningham, has that been the process with all of these different candidates? Okay, just wanted to make that clear. Go ahead.
I know we need to fill on this position. We understand that. This is why I asked why the human resource are going to fill up this position and everything, not do things at the last time and rush it. The question is, do we have community leaders? Do we have parents like a PAC and BBSO be part of the interview when they enter the school?
We had, so the principals made attempts to get PAC members. Whoever was able to attend, attended. If not PAC members were able to attend, or council members, governance members, then there were definitely staff members there as well. So it was not just the principal present. There were other people present from the school, or the parents members were present.
Right, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, I know you're part of the governance. We need to fix this, and we have to fix the situation. So follow the policy the way it is, not to be going crazy back and forth, like Madam Chair said, not be wasting the time, but at least we can follow the policy and everybody be in the same church.
Absolutely. Just to that note, creating a policy takes time and is a useless exercise if that policy is not followed or enforced.
Right. So what we're going to do is, if there's no further conversation on this, Ms. Dixon, we'll connect with for personnel on any further items and then refer to governance at the meeting. I am worrisome of what is happening, because this is not okay. It really is not okay. But what we will do as a board, we have a responsibility to make sure something like this is clear and concise for whatever next steps we're going to take to make sure the superintendent is supported, and that candidates get their fair shot at this.
I need to make it clear. We follow policy as best as we can. If there is no parent willing to, because of schedule, to be present, I cannot delay the process until we can have 2 to 3 members from the PAC or things like that to be present. We are in a need to properly staff our schools, not just teachers, but leaders. We follow the policy as best as we can. Our utmost priority is to make sure that the people entering this school, in these schools and teaching our students are competent, willing, and able. We are not putting forward any candidate that is not qualified for these positions.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon.
Madam Chair,
I think,
I understand Ms. Dixon has to maybe have a former and not interview so many people. If we don't have a pack leader, we got parents very strong in the school that can be part of the interview.
Oh, we do.
I know we have it. I talked to them, and last time something happened, and then one of the pack leaders, they never informed me. So we need to work more with the principal, can find a backup PTSO leader, they can find a very strong leader, because I know we have it in the school. I just want to say that.
I was gonna say, if they're having problems with finding parents, then maybe the board should be aware of that.
We
You know,
should.
reach out to us and say, hey, listen, we've tried and tried and tried to get somebody.
Where did the interviews take place?
all right, so guys,
Yeah, we
we don't need to go any further. We will discuss this at committee. What I'm gonna do is entertain, is someone like to adjourn? Second. All right, is there any questions or concerns? Hear none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Everyone have a good night, thank you.